following program is distributed by the Bears Barroom Radio Network. It's intended for all audiences. Draft on Tap with Danny Shimon and Niel Stopczynski.
Hey, everybody. I am neither of those two people. My name is Aldo Gandia, and welcome to Draft on Tap. If this is the first time you've watched or listened to Draft on Tap, because we also have the audio podcast version available, the premise of the show is that I play the general manager of the Chicago Bears, and then we have two accomplished scouts, barroom scouts, Danny Shimon and Niel Stopczynski. Those guys have a lot of experience watching tape, and we are going to target players who the Chicago Bears could potentially be interested in. And we're going to do that all the way up until the draft, and then they're going to make recommendations on who the Bears should draft, and then I, the general manager, will make the ultimate pick. On today's show, we're going to start off by talking about the latest rumors of the quarterback. Everybody's being rumored to come to play quarterback for the Chicago Bears, so Danny, Niel, and I will talk about that. We're also going to take a closer look at Alabama quarterback Mac Jones, because I got to tell you, the more and more I look at the tape of this guy, I am more and more falling in love with him. So we'll see if Niel and Danny have reservations about some of my likes about this quarterback. We'll also tackle the Mike Pettine joining the Chicago Bears coaching staff as a senior defensive assistant. We'll kind of look back at some of the things that he did with Green Bay and kind of figure out what kind of a fit he will be for the Chicago Bears. And then we'll stay on the topic of defense and talk a little bit about the three defensive players the Bears drafted in last year's draft and get kind of our thoughts about those three guys. And then we'll finish with a peek at the wide receiver draft class. These guys have been pouring through lots of tape, and we're going to have a show totally dedicated to the wide receiver class, but we'll take a look at some of their top picks and tease the next show on that. And we'll also throw in a few other things during this broadcast. So let me bring the guys in now. It is Mr. Danny Shimon and Niel Stopczynski. How are you, fellas? I'll start with you, Danny.
I'm doing great. Things are warming up. We got trade rumors. We got draft prospects pro day starting tomorrow. I'm excited to be here with you guys. The only thing not hot is the weather. I'm freezing, man.
Oh, come on, Danny. It's not that cold outside.
I mean, man.
We haven't gotten to sustained negatives yet even. What are we talking about here, man? Come on,
man. He's getting cold. That's what
hey, two straight weeks of snow. Yeah, I love that. Have you built a snowman yet? Come on.
I did not, but my kids did. I watched. I supervised. I told them what to do, all that stuff. So
there you go.
Niel, how are you doing? You built the snowman yet?
I haven't yet. I don't have a yard, so haven't built a snowman yet, but I wish I could. What a wild week it's been. Wild 2 weeks it's been or so with trade rumors and all that kind of stuff heating up. You don't know what to believe. It's crazy.
I know, it is wild. Niel, one of the things that you do is you support a lot of your local restaurants, and you're always posting on your Twitter account. I went to this restaurant, or I'm going to this restaurant, or asking people for recommendations and so forth. So I commend you. That is outstanding, brother.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love propping up the local spots and everything else. And everywhere I go that I have a good experience, or a good dish or a good drink, or meet somebody cool, or whatever the case may be. I always like putting those people out there because, man, it's been tough for these restaurants. I got a lot of neighbors that are just struggling to keep things alive right now. Yeah. And so anytime I can go ahead and raise them up on a pedestal, I try to do that. So actually, fun fact, Aubrey is, starting her first training shift at Lottie's tonight. So
awesome.
If you need an awesome bartender or server, go check out Lottie's.
Oh, hey, maybe once everything calms down, we can do a live broadcast from one of these venues that Mr. Stopczynski here has made friends with.
That would be unbelievable. I think that would be an awesome kind of thing that we can do.
Let me tell you something.
Hopefully pretty soon.
We threw a party here at my home, was it last summer or summer before? And we hired a bartender, which was the best thing we ever did, because I was allowed to get drunk and not worry about asking people, "Hi, can I make you a drink?" or anything like that. So we brought in a bartender, and it was fantastic. And they also helped with so many other things. It was a great way to throw a party. So
when I host,
I would never do that with Aubrey, because she'd be a guest at the party. So.
I was gonna say, when I host, usually the faster I get drunk, the faster my guests get drunk too. So
there you go. Danny,
All right. Danny's the host then.
Hey guys, before we get into the agenda of what we are talking about, the Bears did a promotion, and it's I'm drawing a blank now. It's John DeFilippo has been promoted. He was the quarterback's coach in 2020. He is now also the passing game coordinator. And a lot of people think that might be related to the fact of trying to woo Carson Wentz here and making Carson Wentz happy or whatever. Albert Breer said that, DeFilippo has said, I can fix Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz had his best season when DeFilippo was his quarterback coach. We're going to talk about Carson Wentz, but I'm just excited about DeFilippo having more responsibility in the passing game because I love the guy. He is a great communicator. And in fact, I've got a clip I want to share with you and the audience. When DeFilippo back in 2017 was with the Eagles, this is him talking about a particular play. And I chopped it up a lot, so it might not make sense to some layman fans, but his communication skills and how he describes a play just come through loud and clear. Take a listen.
Again, we were expecting single safety middle. So what we're doing is in red zone offense, and especially against cover zero, we talk about faith throws all the time with the quarterback. Nick, as you can tell, is going to have faith that Zach Ertz is going to cross 32's face right here. So as you see him cross face, that ball is, we call it a body throw. Whenever you're throwing a faith throw, you want to throw a body throw right between the 8 and the 6. That's what we always say. Throw it right between the 8 and the 6. And if you rewind the play, we have what we call a relief throw on each side for the quarterback. If the quarterback's working the left side of the field here, his relief throw is the return route. If he's working the right side of the field here, his relief throw right now is the stash route coming back here to Brent Selleck. Great throw and catch.
Isn't he great?
yeah, I've seen that before, and yeah, he's a guy that does a great job of breaking it down. And right there, just kind of tells you what the quarterback's going through. We talk about post-snap, pre-snap processing, and that right there is a good example of post-snap being able to see your guys and know where your release valves are to your left and to your right. So that's a great way of just breaking it down right there.
I'm in a little bit of a state of shock right now because Steven has just posted in the chat room that he read that Wentz hated DeFilippo's coaching and they don't get along. So I don't.
Well, I mean, I haven't read that, but I do know that Wentz prefers Frank Reich. So that's a whole dynamic. Like what was going on in Philly? Was it Doug Peterson calling the plays? Was it Frank Reich who was the offensive coordinator? DeFilippo was a quarterback's coach, and so that's why with the whole promotion thing, I really. I didn't put the two and two together in terms of DeFilippo being promoted in terms of hoping to lure Carson Wentz. That he just took over the role or the title that Dave Ragone had, who now, of course, has moved on to the Falcons as offensive coordinator. So I think I did just a natural progression. He's the quarterback's coach. They would make him the passing game coordinator. Same thing with Ragone. He was a quarterback's coach, and then they moved him to this passing game coordinator role when they brought in DeFilippo last year. So I really didn't think that much of it. So we'll see what happens. But DeFilippo has also worked with Derek Carr too. So that's another thing is he was with the Raiders when Derek Carr was there under Jack Del Rio. So that could be another target of the Bears too.
And Kirk Cousins. He's also worked with Kirk Cousins because he was the offensive coordinator for about 8 games, I think.
Right. So Mike Zimmer kicked him out.
That's right, because he wouldn't run the ball. Right. So
sounds familiar, right? Sounds familiar. Something here.
It sure does. Neil, you got any thoughts on DeFilippo you want to share before we move on?
I think the whole rumor mill started with the Colts and the Bears is only because those guys used to be in Philly. I'm not believing anything until something is actually done and on paper and signatures and everything else. I don't believe a single thing out there. And everybody that wants to go ahead and perpetuate all these rumors, man, just relax. Relax. It's driving me crazy right now because I'm just going to go and be honest. Like none of these are viable options right now.
Yep.
The most viable option we have is these 5 guys that we have that are in college right now. They're going to get taken in the first round.
That's right.
Just go get one.
I'm with Neil, except there's a couple of exceptions now and the things are percolating in Seattle. Russell Wilson is that something that's going to happen? And if so, what will it take? And does he have a preferred destination? And the other one is Dak Prescott. This is, you guys, the Bears came out with a hype video this past week, and everyone was excited that Allen Robinson was part of their hype video. That tells us that, hey, he's part of the future.
Right.
Well, the Cowboys came out with a hype video, and guess who was missing from their hype video?
Dak Prescott.
Doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean he's gone or anything like that. But that's something that, his brother took notice of it. He posted something on social media. His cap number is going to be almost $40 million this year. The Cowboys, I think, are already up against it in terms of the cap number. So if something happens there as well, but besides those two guys, and of course we've already talked about Watson and how that's unattainable in our opinion. But if those two guys somehow become available, I'm willing to look there. But yeah, I'm with Niel. If it's not the Russell Wilson, if it's not a Dak Prescott or a Deshaun Watson, I'm going first round pick draft.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting though, man. By the rule of Chicago Bear hype videos, you don't know what's going to happen now.
That's right. You don't know if their team is going to be here because he wasn't in the hype video.
Right. That's true.
It's very true. Getting back to the Russell Wilson thing, I was tuning into NFL Network today, and Mike Garofalo was saying, that Russell Wilson really is tradable. Maybe not this year because of the way the contract is, but apparently the people in Seattle are getting a little tired because he's kind of a high maintenance kind of guy. He always wants to be involved in stuff. He wants to have his say in stuff. And, I think that the NFL with quarterbacks primarily, these superstars, they want to kind of some of the responsibilities that NBA superstars have. They want to have a say in how the team is run and so forth. And so you can argue one way or another, but that is what Russell Wilson wants. And if he's available, the guy is sensational in so many ways. Oh, that's the wrong highlight package. This is the one that I want. This is Russell Wilson throwing some touchdowns, looking outstanding. And the guy's got the accuracy, the guy's got the escapability, the guy's got everything that we would want in a Chicago Bears quarterback, except the fact that the Seattle Seahawks would probably want everything, including Virginia McCaskey and her limo thrown into a trade. So it's highly unlikely we will see Russell Wilson wearing Bears colors, right, guys?
Yeah, I don't think Seattle would be wise to trade him, but if it comes to a thing, I do think, and I don't know if you guys agree, but I think the package for Russell Wilson would be less than for Deshaun Watson. Really? So I think we're talking about minimum 2 first-round picks. With Watson, we were talking about 3 first-round picks and change. Now with Wilson, I think go 2 first-round picks for sure, and then filler, right? Whether it's players, whether it's more, later picks, but because Wilson, I believe is 30, is he 31 or 32? I want to say,
I think Wilson is 33.
33. So he's up there in terms of, now again, am I worried? Quarterbacks are playing into their 40s now. 43-year-old quarterback just won a Super Bowl again. But the thing with Wilson, though, but the thing with Wilson, though, he relies so much on his athletic ability. How much will that affect his overall game if he gets older and slows down a little bit? So that's why I think that the overall compensation for Wilson would be much less than for Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing about Russell Wilson complaining is that, he complained about the amount of times he's sacked. Well, one of the issues with Russell Wilson being sacked so often, besides the fact that he's at average at best offensive lines, is that he holds on to the ball for a long, long time. And when he's not holding it for a long time in the pocket, he's running around there, and that just mounts the sacks. So I thought it was a bit unfair for him to complain about the amount of times he was sacked. And I know that when they started to tear up the Seahawks defense, there were guys like Richard Sherman who didn't have a lot of nice things to say about Russell Wilson. And I think it's because a lot of people did kind of see him as a diva and looking out for himself first. But on the sidelines, he always looks like he's a great team guy, but there have been some complaints about his behavior. So I don't know. What do you think, Neil? Do you think that the Bears should even attempt to make a phone call to John Schneider over in Seattle and see what the asking price is?
I think you have to get a franchise quarterback like that. That kid is so supremely talented. Mm-hmm. And I know that he runs around a lot and he uses his legs a lot, and he has to. Let's be honest, he has to. Mm-hmm. And but some of the things that he does by moving the pocket, by ad-libbing, by going off script, some of the throws that he's able to make while on the run, pinpoint throws downfield for big plays, first downs, touchdowns, whatever the case may be, putting the ball on target where only his receiver can get it. This kid is so supremely talented. You have to knock on the door and at least see what's up there.
Yeah.
That's the thing with Justin Fields. He gets knocked a lot for holding on to the ball too long. And I think it was you, Aldo, I was talking to, and said, kids that are this talented, they have the supreme, confidence in their talents that they know they can hold on to the ball. And if a pass rusher comes, they have the ability to go ahead and make the guy miss and buy more time. Those guys typically hold on to the ball a little bit longer. And that's where in the progression of those guys' careers, you'll see them later on as they kind of get, slow down older, they start getting better and better in terms of, pre-reading and getting rid of the ball quicker. But a lot of these, super talented quarterbacks, athletes, they hold on to the ball a little bit longer because, like I said, they think like they can always make things happen.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get back to the topic of Carson Wentz. I've got some highlights of him. I kind of already clued you in that I had some highlights. This is him when he was at his best, or even for portions of last season. I mean, he showed what he can do best, which is he's a great athletic quarterback. Look at his maneuverability here, escaping the pass rush and picking up yards and throwing while he's on the move because of a poor pass block. And let's remember that he had probably the worst offensive line in the NFL last year. And so that really hurt him. And he's a bit on the injury prone, but there's no doubt that this guy has some skills. And it's a question now of whether any offensive coordinator, any offensive quarterback coach can get him back to playing at the high level that he did. The lowlights from last year are pretty awful. I mean, he just was inaccurate, as you see here. He was missing open men down the field. Here's an open receiver down the field that he underthrows. There were guys that he just didn't spot getting wide open. So he is a big enigma. There's so much to like about this guy, but when you look at the 2020 season, there's a lot to dislike too. What do you guys think?
Yeah, in terms of, for me, Wentz has what you're looking for in terms of a prototypical NFL quarterback. He's got the size, the arm strength, the athletic ability to be able to use his feet and get first downs. However, if I'm Ryan Pace, and that conversation with Howie Roseman includes a first-round pick, I'm hanging up the phone. Because there's no way I'm going to give up a first-round pick for a kid. Although we all agree he's talented. For a kid that led the NFL last year in interceptions with 15. Mm-hmm. We see there, yes, the offensive line was poor, but we also see that he was feeling some pressure there, and he was getting rid of the ball quickly, not seeing open receivers, kind of like what Nick Foles was going through here when he had his stint as a starting quarterback, and then the offensive line was putrid here. So again, if you want to you're talking about a third to fourth round pick this year. A future, a pick, depending on how he plays, put some incentives in that deal. If it's, if he's a, starting quarterback and throws for 30 touchdowns, okay, you get a first round pick. If he's not, you get a second or third, some sort of, escalator or kicker in there. Sure. Then we can talk. But if you're talking about first round pick this year and a first round pick next year, or just a first round pick this year, the 20th overall pick, I'm like, no, I'm passing up on that one.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. There's no way I'm leveraging and mortgaging the future of this franchise for a guy that has gone so far off the deep end after getting hurt. What has that injury done inside that kid's head? Mm-hmm. I think is the biggest question you have to ask, and the biggest thing you have to really get down to the bottom with. And I think everybody wants to go back to that one season where he was probably the MVP before he got hurt. I think that one of the things that really made him valuable that season was his ability to ad-lib and go off script. But was he ever really consistent when he was on script? I think that was one of the things that was really a big question mark with Carson Wentz was that, yeah, like Danny said, he's got all the attributes and traits and everything else. But, he was able to do some magical things with his feet and escape pressure and all these off script, type of things. But, can you really pull out a significant highlight package of him really being a difference maker, him being an MVP type quarterback when things were perfect? And that's the one thing that always has been inconsistent, I think, with him, whether he was hurt or not, whether it be before the injury nor after the injury. I think what just got exacerbated was, the clock in his head ticked just a little bit a little bit quicker,
yep.
After he came back after that injury. And I think you're really seeing it take a toll on him. And again, maybe he needs a sports psychologist or something. Maybe he needs Tony Robbins. I don't know what he needs, but I think a lot of it's up here, and that's got to get fixed somehow.
You know what? And there's a lot of Foles talk in the chat room, but I saw that in Nick Foles. With each passing game, it was starting to affect him too. I mean, that offensive line for the Bears was getting so bad that he was throwing off his back foot, that he was seeing ghosts out there in terms of defensive linemen coming when they weren't coming. I mean, he was really, really bad. And I think, the same, I've even seen Peyton Manning throwing the ball in super slow motion and cringing a second or two before the defensive lineman was about to hit him. Why? Because the offensive line was having a really poor day. And even for the great ones, if there's no pass protection there, it's going to impact their play somehow, some way. They could go from a grade A quarterback to a grade B, or a grade A quarterback to a grade C. It all depends on how hard they're hit. And so I think, with Carson Wentz, when he got the concussion a year ago, he said, that it scared him. And that's the worst thing that can happen to any player. When they suffer an injury and they're scared, because the potential for them to get scared again is very, very easy, particularly when you're playing around an offensive line. Every darn game that they had last season, there was a new offensive line combination. So it was not a good scenario for him in 2020 in Philadelphia. And then not having the confidence of Doug Peterson, who the more and more after that Super Bowl win, the more and more he started acting really eccentric, and he started to lose a lot of key coaches too. And so sometimes you wonder, head coach, was it really the head coach, or was it Buddy Ryan that we won the Super Bowl with, And so that's been applicable for a lot of teams. So a lot of questions. I'm not totally against the Carson Wentz thing, but I would like for them to send us a number 1 draft pick, and then we send them a second, and we'll take Wentz off their hand.
Because you're taking on a big contract, right? You're taking on $20+ million. I think it's for the next 3 or 4 years. So again, you're putting that much money of your cap on a quarterback that you're not sure about. I mean, I don't want nothing to do with that. The other thing with Wentz is he's a bit of a loner, right? He's a guy that in the locker room, he doesn't always rah and all that stuff. The other thing is I've heard that he's more of a, he's a point the finger guy as opposed to point the thumb kind of guy. So if everything is going wrong, it's always, typically someone else's fault. So that's a thing that in the locker room, if you noticed that when they made that run with Nick Foles, the Eagles, a lot of players came out and were backing up Nick Foles and defending Nick Foles, but you never heard much about Carson Wentz, and a lot of those guys didn't really buy into Carson Wentz, I believe. So, like I said, if it's a 3rd round pick or in a future considerations, I'm in. I'll consider it. But again, you're gonna have to renegotiate that contract, because there's no way you can give him $27 million. The Bears are already up against the cap right now.
Steven says, check this out. What if they are actually discussing swapping the 6th pick, which the Eagles have, and the 20th pick that the Bears have, since the Bears have to move up and draft a quarterback anyway? So that is an interesting scenario. I mean, I wouldn't, if Ryan Pace were to pull off a trade like that, where he could swap 1st-round draft picks and we take Carson Wentz off their hands and just have to deal with that salary, and maybe Nagy and DeFilippo can get him back to some type of play that can at least make us competitive and give us a chance in the playoffs, then I don't know. I'm thinking hard about it, man.
If that scenario plays out where they're giving us Carson Wentz and the 6th pick for the 20th pick and some other, Nick Foles and whoever else picks you want, I'm doing that, because as long as that 6th pick is going to be my future quarterback, right? Because if I go up there, I'm getting a quarterback, because in case Carson Wentz bombs out, I got my other guys starting here. And if Carson Wentz does work out, hey guys, I got 2 quarterbacks now, and now I'm starting recouping some draft capital that I've lost over the years.
And there's a lot more, draft people talking about all 5 of these quarterbacks going in the top 10 picks now. So
I've been hearing that.
It's getting kind of hairy as far as how far we're going to have to move up to actually, have a shot at getting the guy that we want.
Remember, I was one of the first ones that said, guys, 5 quarterbacks are going in the 1st round, if not 6. So, now we're, before we're talking about, and we'll talk about Mac Jones later on, but I'm saying, like, people were saying, is 20 too high for Mac Jones? Mac Jones is not making it at 20.
Yeah, he's not. There is no way he's going to make it at 20. But yeah, you're right. We're going to talk about Mac Jones momentarily. I want to bring up Marcus Mariota, because he's the latest name thrown into this rumor carousel of potential Bears pickups via a trade. Marcus Mariota signed a 2-year contract with the Raiders, so he belongs to the Raiders. We've been talking a lot about potentially trading for Derek Carr, but now maybe it's Marcus Mariota that they're talking to the Raiders about. What do you guys think about Marcus Mariota? I'll start with you first, Neil.
Oh, Marcus Mariota, did he impress any of us when he was in Tennessee? He had some nice clips, had some nice highlights. I don't think he did anything really, significant at that franchise. I think bringing him in is literally just a couple games worth of stopgap, and then to have a backup quarterback, to get the new kid out there and in the mix and playing. I'm not very fired up about that at all. I think one of the first things I put out was like, this is ridiculous. And then you also had Gardner Minshew and Ryan Fitzpatrick thrown into conversation today. It's just getting more and more ridiculous as the days go forward. Who are we going to try to trade for next, Danny?
I'm trying to think, Blaine Gabbert. I mean, what other, failed first round pick we're going to go get. But I agree with you in terms of the Gardner Minshew. I mean, I saw that. I'm like, come on, guys, seriously. But the one thing about Mariota that I do know is I know Ryan Pace was very high on him when he was coming out of that draft from Oregon. So I know there was talk about him trying to get up there. That's when the Bears had Jay Cutler. That was Ryan Pace's first draft. So I think I know he's high on him. The one thing that I would be okay with Mariota, it's going to be probably a 1-year deal. Obviously, he's got 1 year left on his contract. He's making about $7.5 to $8 million, so you can kind of fit him in there in the cap, and you don't have to give up that much to get him. And he's a guy that I actually targeted for the Bears last offseason as a possible veteran free agent to bring in here and compete with Trubisky for the starting job. Now, has he been a disappointment? Sure. After those first couple of years in Tennessee, he had some injuries and then it was ineffective play. But the one thing about Mariota, he did lead his team to a road playoff victory. He led the Titans versus the Chiefs. He went there and Arrowhead led them to a victory. So at least he has a playoff victory under his belt. So he does bring some of that. But the other thing I like about the Mariota idea is because you're not investing a lot of draft capital, you're not investing a lot of money in him. That means you're still out there looking for your future quarterback. So if you bring in a Mariota and still then make a move up in the draft to get one of the 5 guys Neil and I have been talking about, I'm okay with that. And let's see what Mariota can do. But that's a scenario that I like to think about. But in terms of bringing him in as a savior, like he's the guy and that's it, that's not going to fly with me either.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, I think we've kind of covered all of the free agent quarterback rumors. There probably are more, but I'm getting to the point now where I'm not sure it's worth talking about this anymore until we actually see some action or get a really good source to talk about the rumors. I mean, we're getting rumors from people who have 5 followers and stuff. Hey, a source tells me. Who's that? Your teacher? your 6th grade teacher? It is this is the season. Greg Gabriel says you just don't believe anybody now. Unless a Schefter or somebody who's been working in the media business for a long time, and I actually put that out on my Twitter too. The only people with sources are people who have been in the media for some time, or they're a professional player or have worked for an organization for some time. And if it's not, somebody like that, then they probably don't have a legitimate source to talk about. But there are exceptions, and sometimes when those exceptions reveal what they've heard, they're not going to get any more inside source information because it usually is something that was shared in confidence. So I want to turn our attention now to Mac Jones. I have been watching tape of him for the last few days, and I'm just falling more and more and more in love with him. I have him number 3rd on my list of quarterbacks. And I know, Danny, you wanted to kind of challenge me on that list, but actually you wanted to challenge me because of where I'm dropping your guy, Sam Ehlinger down.
We'll go back to your list later on. Let's talk about Mac Jones right now.
All right. Well, talk to me about Mac Jones. Do you have him 3rd on your list too, or is it just me?
I have him 4th, actually. Okay. I think this is Mac Jones and me. We go back to the first show when I was talking about this is a kid that has a chance to play himself up into the first round, and lo and behold, he's gone ahead and done that. For me, with him, his negatives are his lack of athletic ability, right? He's a guy that's going to be a pure pocket passer. Mm-hmm. He's done it for a year and almost a half. Like I think he's got 1 full year starting and then 4 games last year. So he's got about 17 starts under his belt in college, 4 more than Mitch Trubisky had. But he's a guy for me that really improved this year. And I know he gets downgraded for the cast he had around him. But if you think about it, guys, he lost Jalen Waddle. Devontae Smith was really his only receiver out there. And he had the running back Najee Harris. He had a pretty good offensive line. But if you look at his passes, it's not like he's throwing these passes in these wide windows and the receiver's going to have to stop, adjust, and make the catch. But the only reason they make the catch is because they have such big passing windows. He's throwing it pinpoint on the run. The receiver is not breaking stride, whether it's a vertical pass, whether it's a horizontal pass, crossers, you name it. And I think this week or 2 weeks ago down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, he proved a lot in terms of leadership abilities. The coaches saw him around his teammates and how those guys on this team rallied around him, and how he kind of got in with the receivers and was talking to him during those practices and saying, hey, where do you want the ball? Where do you like it? Just trying to get to know his receivers, stuff that, quarterbacks, good leaders on offense do that. So, and I think he made some throws. They're eye-opening in terms of, ball placement, tight window throws that, he's been getting knocked on. So for me, Mac Jones, after that Senior Bowl week, I think I put him up ahead of Trey Lance. Unfair maybe to Trey Lance, the kid, not his fault, but he didn't play this year. Right. Obviously Lance is a much better, superior athlete than Mac Jones, but I just think the way he processes the game, Mac Jones, the way he knows, pre-snap, he's got an idea of what's going to happen with the defense. Post-snap, he recognizes any sort of changes, any sort of alterations within the defensive coverages, and he makes quick decisions, and that's what you need. Yeah, I think everybody thinks that Nagy needs a athletic quarterback. That would be great. But he needs a guy that can process really quick. If it's a run pass option, whether to hand the ball off to the running back or keep it and know where your exit valve is, in terms of your hot route and all that stuff. So I think Mac Jones would be a sensational pick here. And if the Bears have a chance, like I said, I don't think he'll be there at 20, so they're gonna have to move up and get him. Just a matter of how much you have to give up to get him.
Yeah, Neil.
Yeah, Mac Jones, I think I have on my list as number 4 right now. Super Bowl week, he really showed the ability to throw a receiver's ball. And I think that was the biggest thing that we all had questions about, was being able to throw a receiver's ball. And that's not only, giving the receiver the ability to make the catch in throwing the receiver open, but also throwing a hold up, keeping the guy out of the trainer's room, essentially, right? Kind of protecting the receiver, if that makes sense.
Sure.
To me, he's pure arm strength. Right. His mechanics are not pretty whatsoever, and there's times I wonder really how he's generating the ability to push the ball down the field. Like his hips don't always come around. Often he's off his back foot or leaning off balance. But I mean, he's getting the ball there either with power and velocity or with touch, which signifies to me great arm talent. How much greater can he get with discipline improvement, honing in on his lower body mechanics and balance. I'm very intrigued to see what happens there at the next level specifically. His deep ball is a thing of beauty. The touch and accuracy are next level at that. And with almost 10-inch hands, he can easily grip the ball. He's pretty lethal as far as pump fakes goes. Controlling the DBs as far as what they're doing, manipulating the defensive scheme out there. He's strong in the pocket. He doesn't pat the ball. He doesn't have happy feet. He doesn't get rattled. These are all phenomenal things. Keeping his eyes downfield, doing a good job reading what he's given defensively, whether he's under duress or not. And rarely is he facing pressure anyways, but he still knows where he needs to go with the ball, the pre-snap, post-snap stuff. We always talk about his athleticism, and I hate that because I do think the kid has some ability. It's not great, but he's not a standing statue though. He executed option offense concepts during his time at Bishop Kenny in Jacksonville. Still, by the way, one of my favorite high school football venues right there in the water. It's beautiful. That's another story. But I mean, he can move the pocket. He can extend plays. He can avoid pressure. He's certainly not an explosive playmaker with his feet, right?
Right.
But he's at least adequate. And I think one of the things I love most about him, though, outside of all the things that he does with his arm and with his legs and with his head and everything else, but I mean, his moxie and his swag, it's a weird word to use with this kid, but his swag is a little bit different than other guys, right. But that is what it is. It's this cool, calm, collected confidence. I'm a badass. Yeah. And, so much so that he doesn't have to be arrogant about it either. He keeps everything as loose as possible in the locker room. Similar kind of like, to me, it's sort of kind of the same deal as the Cubs in like 2015, 2016 with Joe Madden. Mm-hmm. Those guys stayed loose and they stayed confident and they just kept on winning and nothing ever got up in their heads. Right. And they went all the way to the NLCS to 1 year, won the World Series the next. So, I mean, like keeping those guys loose as far as mindset goes, allow them to go out and play. And I think that's what he does. My guess is that he studies so much film that everything's just a reflex at this point.
Yeah.
You know, he's able to be loose, and the looseness inhibits the paralysis by analysis, and he just goes out there and he executes. You know, and I mean, he's not perfect. There's times he's going to make a bad read. He's going to, or, you know, he's going to be mechanical with his read, whatever the case may be. Certainly won't ever be as bad as Mitch Trubisky, who's extremely mechanical and is only one read quarterback. But, and I mean, there's times when his throwing mechanics get in the way of executing. But I mean, largely, I think those instances are few and far between. There's a couple instances this year in the Tennessee game where like he didn't look as sharp, and that's where I think the next level of discipline is going to come in. You know, he's got improvements to make, but the kid has talent. And if he's got a killer mentality, which I think is really what the next kind of 2 months is going to be huge for him, is going to be crucial, is the interview processes. If these NFL teams go into the room, watch him on the board, listen to him talk, and come away with this kid having a killer mentality, watch out. I mean, he's going to be a monster. And I mean, and again, I mean, these next 2 months are going to be huge. We're going to learn a lot about, you know, what these NFL teams are finding out, you know, through these next couple of months worth of the process.
Let me show you some clips that I picked up from his game against Georgia. And Neil, you were saying, you know, about getting his hips. On this throw, I think we're seeing him get his hips through. Even when he's facing pressure here, he really steps in and drives that ball, despite the fact that there's a guy in his face, and it does alter his throw. I think that we've got another angle here. So take a look at that and let me know what you think regarding his hips on this throw.
Well, see, what I don't necessarily like about him, you see at the very tail end of that play, he's always like leaning to the left or off balance. He's really throwing off his back foot. His plant foot is like a stilt. It should never be that way. You should always be, you know, having a center of gravity when you're in the middle of, you know, your upper body mechanics, your throwing process. And in terms of getting your hips around, that's called getting your arm around, following through with the pass, letting that throwing hand come down basically to your left hip pocket if you're a right throwing quarterback. That's really getting your hips around, generating power with your hips, with your lower body, stepping into the throw. I really never see him step into throws. I think a lot of times that's what can cause probably NFL DBs to go ahead and pick him off more than he has at the collegiate level. Right. But I think what has happened with him is that he has had so much success with the way he's thrown the ball as it is right now. It's going to be like minor tweaks once he gets to the next level. It's going to make him all that much better of a quarterback. But what he's been running down there is basically NFL concepts with Nick Saban and the myriad of offensive coordinators that they've had over the years with that offense. Every year it's just a carousel rotating over and over and over again with offensive coordinators. But once he gets in the NFL, all that discipline I think is going to come to the forefront. He's going to hone in his lower body mechanics even that much more, and I think that's really going to improve him so much more so as a quarterback. I think he's even going to elevate further than he already has over the past about a year and a half since he first got his first action. Right.
Danny, take a look at this clip and comment on him. This is him throwing a bomb versus the blitz. And guy's got some guts because here comes that outside rush, the right tackle. He kind of screws up there, picks up the wrong guy. He lets this defender come in, and Mac does a great job staying in the pocket and completing the long touchdown pass. I'll play it again for you so you can comment on it.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to touch on earlier, and Neil touched on it too, is his pocket presence. When he feels that outside pressure, you see him be able to climb that ladder, step up in the pocket. Here, you got a two-step hitch up in the pocket and gets that ball off. As you said, the guy's coming, he's going to get hit, goes in. That shows me his toughness to be able to stand in there and take that hit. And look at the delivery. The ball is on the spot to the receiver. Big time play and big time throw. So, going back about his mechanics, Neil, his mechanics are not going to be pretty. But the one thing, if you go back to that first highlight where we showed, again, the mechanics were imperfect, but look at the ball placement, look at the accuracy with the guy in his face. So, I mean, that tells me right there, Phillip Rivers is a great case for me. When I saw him throw the football at North Carolina State, I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? How is this guy getting the ball down the field? But he had, a 17-year career, pretty accurate quarterback. And as long as that quarterback's getting the ball down the field accurately to his receiver, the mechanics, it can be worked on a little bit. But a lot of these quarterback coaches say, hey, if it's working, we're not going to mess with them, especially he's been doing this for probably his entire career. So that's the one thing. Now, with the one scenario, the one guy that really threw me off in terms of mechanics and has really improved at the next level, at least in recent history, is Patrick Mahomes. When I saw him play at Texas Tech, his mechanics were all over the place. Yeah. He was just pretty much all arm strength and athletic ability, and he has really honed that in and done a better job than what he was in college. He still goes off the reservation here and there in terms of his overall, mechanics, but footwork and all that stuff. But as long as a quarterback gets the ball there, is accurate, and ball placement is good. Mechanics, if they need to be tweaked, they can be tweaked. But I think with Mac Jones, he's a guy, his pocket presence is phenomenal. The way he just feels pressure outside, like I said, steps up in the pocket. Yeah, he's a guy that he's not going to be, a quote unquote scrambler. And I think why he gets knocked, Neil, is because compared to the other 4 guys we have going in this first round, he's not the athlete those 4 guys are. So I think that's what, people kind of knock him down on. But for me, he's a guy that can play on my team anytime and anywhere in any system, really. So I'm a huge Mac Jones fan. And Neil, remember our first show? You had him in the 3rd, 4th round. So I'm glad you came around on.
I had him
Mac
2nd,
Jones.
3rd. Come on.
Yeah, 3rd round. Play the tape, Aldo. Play that tape.
Stop putting stuff in my mouth. Come on.
Come on.
Put words in my mouth now. Let's go.
All right, I'm getting yelled at here saying, look at the fact that he says, can you guys see my comment? I think I'm being blackballed by Aldo. Let me search for what you had here. I think the fact that says, is Pace going to draft a quarterback or trade away our draft capital to save his ass? What do you guys think Pace will do?
He has to draft one.
Thank you.
That's it.
I wish, and I think both Neil and Aldo all agree he has to draft a quarterback, but I think he's going to trade away capital to save his ass as well. So if he can, the question is, can he do both? Can he get a quarterback? That's why I like the Marcus Mariota kind of talk there, because you don't give up that much to get him in. Yeah, he's not the best option, but he's a guy, if you do bring him in for, say, I don't know, a 4th round pick, 5th round pick, whatever, I don't even know what the pricing, asking price would be for Mariota, but you bring that guy in as a veteran, he can start for you day 1 or week 1, and then you draft a kid like Trey Lance or Mac Jones, someone like that in the 1st round, and then you let him sit behind Mariota, and then kind of, when he's ready to go, take over the reins. So that's like the scenario I would like to play out. But again, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are in your savior ass kind of mode right now. So I just, it'd be a shame if Ted Phillips or George McCaskey would allow Ryan Pace to go ahead and trade future draft picks, draft capital to go get a guy, like say we're talking about Carson Wentz, for example, just so he can try and save his job. But then, it ends up, really hurting the Bears in terms of, draft down the road. So That's what I would hate to see.
What about what Tua is asking? Would you guys be willing to trade a star on the defensive side, i.e. a Mac, Roquan, Fuller for 1st or 2nds to package to move up in this draft to get, you're not going to get Trevor. You're not going to get you could probably get Fields if you move up, trading away some of these guys. But I don't think Mac is going to get you much because of
big of a contract.
Right. Roquan is the guy everybody will want. And
right.
You can move up high in this draft, get multiple draft picks for a guy like Roquan Smith, because that speedy inside linebacker is so valued. I mean, he can patrol so much of the field, and he's getting better and better and better. So that's the guy people are going to be asking for when you're talking about trading defensive stars. So if you can package a Khalil Mack or a Kyle Fuller for something rich in terms of a franchise quarterback, you definitely would go there, right, guys?
I don't think a Kyle Fuller or a Roquan by himself will allow you to move up high enough to get your quarterback, because they know what you're coming up for. You're coming up for franchise quarterbacks, and no matter how great Roquan is and potentially can be, he's not going to be a franchise quarterback. So those values are extremely high. So, I mean, I'll take a Roquan, your 1st round pick this year, probably a 1st round pick next year, and probably more if you're talking about going up into the top 6 or 7 picks in the 1st round. So, at that point, you have to weigh your idea and say, all right, that's why you have to have a plan here. All right, these are my quarterbacks. These are the 5, for example. These are my 1st round guys. At what point, does quarterback 1, 2, 3, 4 go? And you're like, all right, I got to go get my 5th guy. And that's where you start talking to teams and see how far you can move up. But in terms of giving away players for draft picks, I highly doubt you get a 1st round pick for Roquan Smith right now. No matter how good he is, I don't think a team will give you a 1st round pick for him.
And regardless, to me, if it's me making the calls, Roquan Smith is untouchable. I'm not giving him up for anybody. I mean, you got to have that guy in the middle on the defensive side of the ball, just like you got to have your quarterback. And now I understand that guy is not nearly as important to the team as the quarterback, but he's probably the 4th most important guy on that team outside of the quarterback. And you need that guy.
Yep.
Oh, I wouldn't want to get rid of him either. Yeah, I mean, especially if you're not going to get anything of value in like terms of a first round pick. I would never get rid of Roquan Smith. Like I said, he is, he's the next star on that defensive front seven.
Do you guys agree with Mr. X, who says, let me put this up on the screen here. Mr. X says, Khalil Mack is a bum.
No, I don't agree to that.
Come on, Mr. X. He says he doesn't give 100%. I don't think that is true. I think that what my concern regarding Khalil Mack is I think the injuries are starting to catch up with him, and it's impacting his stamina, his ability to play at that elite level that we know he can play at. You know, he's been in the league a long time. He plays at a really, really high level, and I think that it's starting to show. And he's going to be the type of player who is going to have like multiple days off during camp, and during the week he'll get his Veterans Day off, and that impacts a player starting game time if they're not out there practicing with the rest of the guys. That's my biggest issue with Khalil Mack.
Yeah, I mean, his thing is, and that's why the Robert Quinn signing was such a disappointment last year, because he was a guy, if he brought consistent pressure, you would now be able to bring Mack off a lot more, give him some more downs where he can kind of rest his body, bring in an opposite kid, you know, like a Trevor Gibson or Travis Gibson on the opposite side, or Vaughters or whatnot, Mingo. But Quinn would be that consistent guy giving you that pressure off the other side. So because Quinn didn't come through, you have to have Mack out there more so than probably they wanted to. And like I said, I think every week except for 5 this year, he was on the injury report with some sort of ailment, whether it was a shoulder, a knee, an ankle, a back, and so I think that even that at the end of that press conference, I think Ryan Pace alluded to the fact that Mack had a lot of things that weren't public knowledge in terms of injuries that he dealt with as well. So just look at all you have to do is go back and don't look at stats with Khalil Mack. Look at the impact he has on the team in terms of the double teams he draws. There's times I saw him with 3 guys, whether it's the guard, a tackle, and a running back chipping him. So he draws that much attention. It's just a shame that no one else other than Akeem Hicks on that front line is doing anything to take advantage of that.
And Mr. X is sending love. He says he loves you guys and loves the show.
Love you too, Mr. X.
Hey, great comment here or question from Cerelbird to Butcher. Which quarterback has the best leadership in y'all opinions? And so I am imagining that he is talking about the college crop of quarterbacks. That is a good question. I would have to say Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones are probably leading in that leadership compartment. What do you guys think?
Well, if you're talking about the first round guys that Neil and I have tabbed as first round, I think Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Justin Fields, don't sell the kill short as well. I mean, he played that Clemson game. He played with I still think it's broken ribs or bruised ribs, and he came through and had a terrific game. So don't sell him short. But I talk about overall, my guy Sam Ehlinger, man, I'm telling you, his intangibles off the field are going to be off the charts, and a coaching staff is going to fall in love with him in terms of off the field stuff. But I'll leave that for the discussion.
We'll get to that in a minute. What do you think from a leadership standpoint, Neil?
I think it's Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor, right?
I think Trevor Lawrence is a second coach on the field from everything that I've gathered from a character and football intelligence standpoint. The offense flows through him, and I'm not sure there's another quarterback in this class that can say that, or that has that sort of importance to his offense. The offense literally flows through him. But he's been starting since the day he walked in the door, and I think he's lost probably like 2 games his entire career. That kid has the world by the balls right now, and he's the guy that really kind of, I mean, let's be honest, he ran the show at Clemson for as long as he's been there. I don't think there's another quarterback on this list that is basically the offensive coordinator on the field, kind of like a Peyton Manning type, and running the team like he is.
The one thing with Trevor Lawrence is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, but he doesn't, with Justin Ross out this year due to injury, he doesn't have a potential first round pick at receiver playing for him. And he's got good, solid players. And he's got, a solid running back and offensive line, but he doesn't have a first round pick at receiver playing for him. So he's a guy that when Neil says that offense runs through him, that's what he means. So he's a guy that pretty much dictates that whole offense. If you look at Justin Fields, he's got Chris Olave, he's got some other talented players on the outside. We talked about some of the guys that Mac Jones has on the outside. Trey Lance, another guy that doesn't really have much talent in terms of the receiver position, in terms terms of first round projected players. So, that's why Trevor Lawrence is so highly thought of and a guy that is going to come in and probably be at the face of the franchise down in Jacksonville.
Well, again, I mean, in addition to that, though, a lot of these other guys look to the sideline for, hey, what are we going to do? Trevor Lawrence has it all up here. He's out there making the audibles. He's making the next calls. In between plays, he'll look to the sideline to see what's going on. But he's the guy out there. He's basically the offensive coordinator running the show, and that's why I mean, like, yeah, he doesn't have big time players that are going to go in the first round this year. The Travis Etienne kid might be the only other one that's maybe potentially going to be a first round pick. But as far as the passing game goes, he doesn't have a guy outside of Justin Ross that is that talented. I think the Amari Rodgers kid, we'll get to that at some point today or next week. But Amari Rodgers, I think, is a second day kid. But as far as supremely talented kids in the passing game, yeah, you're right, Danny. He doesn't have a first round guy, but as far as he's basically a coach on the field. I think that's probably even more important.
That's why we always talk about experience. How many starts the kid had? Guys with 30 plus starts in their collegiate career, that tells you that's the experience. That's the leadership there out there. The guy knows the offense just as good as the offensive coordinator. So that's key right there. And you see a lot of that come up with Lawrence when you watch his tape. Same thing with Mac Jones. And Mac Jones only has 17 career starts. However, you see him with the command of the offense. So that's another key thing there as well. So that tells you that the kid picks up the offense and he has a way of being able to verbalize it to his teammates as well. So.
But I wanted to go back to you talking about Justin Fields' leadership ability. I totally agree with you. That kid is something. He fought for the Ohio State to play during the COVID thing. He petitioned for it. He wanted to get back out there on the football field. I saw him interviewed talking about it. I mean, the kid is, smart and brave and competitive. And so when you're talking about leadership, he definitely deserves mention. I'm glad you brought him up. All right, let's get back to this Sam Ehlinger thing. So today on Twitter, I sent out what was it, about a month ago, I listed my top quarterbacks in this draft and in the round that I suspected that they were going to go in. And it were basically Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones I have at number 3, Justin Fields at 4, Trey Lance at 5, Jamie Newman at 6, and Sam Ehlinger at 7, and Kyle Trask, who I'm just not impressed with, at number 8. And then I in my comments, and Danny saw this, I'm kind of dropping Sam Ehlinger down to a day 3 pick. I originally had him as a second round pick, a day 2 pick, but I'm just concerned by some of the things that I'm hearing, much more than what I'm seeing. Although, what I'm seeing is still, he's not first round caliber and second round caliber, but I thought he would be a third round caliber guy. But now I'm hearing some things about him that he might actually go in day 3. But Danny, I'm going to give you the floor here. Talk about why you are convinced he's a day 2 quarterback and would be a good quarterback for the Bears to draft if they don't get one of these top 5.
Well, I mean, for me, it's just like I talked about is the off the field stuff. It's the leadership. It's the moxie. It's the want to. It's the guy when the game is on the line, end of the fourth quarter or overtime, he always steps up to the challenge and always makes the big play. So, it doesn't always look pretty, throughout the game, but he's the guy that whenever, it's crunch time, the guy's always there to answer the bell. So my big thing with your list there, although it wasn't the fact that you had him, in day 2 to pick, because I think I have him second round, Niel's got him in third round. So that's in the same range we're looking at, is that you put up Jamie Newman ahead of him. A guy that just looked horrible at the Senior Bowl in terms of unable to memorize an offense in a week. A guy who opted out last year, didn't even play last year. So other than the fact that Jamie Newman looks good in his shorts because he's 6'2", 6'3", has a strong arm. It's like, why would you put Jamie Newman ahead of Sam Ehlinger? That was my question.
See, my feeling on Jamie Newman is that I think he could be this year's Dak Prescott, a third, fourth round draft pick who is going to quickly develop. I mean, he's got all of these skills, and it really sucks that he didn't play this season, because he would have played at Georgia after playing his collegiate career earlier at Wake Forest, and to see him play at Georgia would have been great. But unfortunately, he decided to opt out, and unfortunately, he hasn't really talked about it publicly to make us all feel like, okay, I understand why he opted out, or he's got a family history of this or whatever. So that it left us all with a bad taste. But I just look back at that Wake Forest tape, and I just think that there's so much promise with this guy that he's the guy that I would pick above Sam Ehlinger, because I've seen Sam Ehlinger now play for 4 seasons, and to me, Ehlinger feels like a much more mobile. Don't punch me, don't punch me, Danny, but a much more mobile Chase Daniel. That's what he reminds me.
All right. I mean, well, if Sam Ehlinger is a bust, I'll be here for the criticism. If Sam Ehlinger becomes a starting NFL quarterback, I will be here for the "I told you so" as well. So
I know you will. I know, Neil, you probably feel with Danny that Jamie Newman is not on your list of quarterbacks you'd like the Bears to covet, right?
No, Jamie Newman is number 9 on my list right now, and that is I'm being generous.
Whoa, generous at 9! Holy cow!
Yes, I am not a fan of Jamie Newman right now.
And so that is primarily because he decided to opt out, or you have other reasons?
I mean, listen, I'm not big on kids opting out. All right, especially at 100%, like it to a different level. If you're a quarterback, if you're a quarterback, you're expected to set an example. You're expected to play. You're expected to be a leader. And especially in his case, what drives me absolutely nuts is this kid went to Georgia for a reason and decided to opt out. And so my thing is he just non-competitive? Does he have, medical issues that make him susceptible to also not being available to play in the future? Or is he just scared? So there's so many like bizarre red flags and questions that pop up with Jamie Newman for me right now. And then you have the kid coming back and or not coming back, but coming out and playing in the Senior Bowl and just looking as average as possible. And I just was not fired up, especially during a Senior Bowl performance. I wasn't fired up. Now I agree with Aldo. Like, he showed some really nice things at Wake Forest. And I've also said too that I think Sage Surratt, I think, has really bailed him out a lot of times with some amazing catches. Has made him look really good, here and there and everywhere else. But I think that Jamie Newman is probably a guy that I am going to pass on, whether we're still looking for a quarterback in 4th, 5th round or not. And I'm just hoping that we go ahead and take our guy in the 1st round, or maybe even the 2nd round, with or 2nd or 3rd round, day 2, with a guy like Sam Ehlinger. Because I mean, really, as far as like backup plans go, I'm not going to be upset about that. Kyle Trask is out there, and I said before, I think he's 4th round value. Kellen Mond is the one that is really interesting to me. He's really elevated himself on my list after that Senior Bowl game. Currently he's number 8 on my list as far as my rankings go. Kellen Mond is a guy that I would give a lot of consideration to taking late day 2, early day 3 if we're still in the business of trying to find a quarterback, and we're just looking for a guy to come in and develop, because I think he's a little bit of a developmental guy. He's got a ton of really nice traits, but in no way in shape or form I think about taking Jamie Newman over Kellen Mond or Sam Ehlinger or even Kyle Trask for that matter.
Well, Ravi wants Kyle Trask, and so does Jeremy. I just don't see it with Kyle Trask. And yeah, he did some really cool things at Florida, but he does kind of remind me of that Mitch Trubisky quarterback without the mobility, one read quarterback. So I'm not real high on him right now. And, we still have a lot more time to evaluate these quarterbacks. And so things are going to change. But I got a feeling that right now I forgot what I was going to say, but the key thing is the Bears have to go out there and get one of these top 5. Have to go out there and get them, and that it's a disaster for this team if they don't, because if they're going to trade tons of resources for a name free agent, and they're not going to get Deshaun Watson. We went through that in our last show. It's just not going to happen. But they're going to trade multiple 1st round draft picks and other capital for a named quarterback. This could be just a disaster in the about to happen. So let's just hope that they can move up at a reasonable price and get one of these top 5 quarterbacks. And my vote right now is that Mac Jones is the guy that they should target. So, all right, guys, enough on those quarterbacks. Should we move to Mike Pettine?
I do have another quarterback that I've been watching lately, and I think he's a guy we should add him to the list. He's a guy that I've been reaching out to some of my contacts, and I haven't gotten any sort of different answer yet. But he's a guy that I think he could be a day 3 guy, possibly a late day 2 guy. And then this is Davis Mills from Stanford. He's a redshirt junior. Kind of surprised me that he came out. He's got good size at 6'3", 220 pounds. Runs a pro style system there at Stanford. Does the whole play action thing. Has taken snaps on the center. Goes through a full field progression. Not terribly mobile, but also not a complete statue back there. Has solid arm strength. So this is the guy to keep an eye on. If he came out as a junior, so maybe he got a high grade from the advisory board, or maybe he just wanted to leave Palo Alto. I don't know why he wouldn't do that, but anyway, he's a kid that I've been watching, and he's caught my eye. He's impressed me. There are some things he needs to clean up in terms of some of his downfield accuracy. Just to a lot of the balls are just on a line drive as opposed to being able to feather the ball with some touch, but. Is intriguing. So if the Bears do go make a trade, for give up some draft capital and they have some extra picks in that round 3, round 4 area, this is a guy if they bring in, I'd be very, very intrigued with.
He can catch the ball too. Saw that pass that he just got there for a touchdown. Pretty good.
Yeah, so this is another guy that remember we talked about a couple weeks ago in terms of where the drop is. Obviously the first 5 guys are the first tier from Niel and I. I think the second tier is going to be guys like Trask, Ellinger, and Mon. And I think he asked me if there's anybody else that's draftable, and this kid definitely is draftable. So we're talking about middle rounds here, and a guy that can come in and might not start right away, but as a guy that you can probably project in terms of being able to be a guy that you can groom and eventually hopefully become into a starter. So.
Alex has a question. Can you ask about maybe trading for Jacob Eason or Drew Lock or Will Grier? Like, is there any young quarterback around the league that Danny and Niel feel like they might be on the chopping block and perhaps the Bears should target? I mean, the one guy that I think of immediately is Sam Darnold. Are the Jets ready to move on from Sam Darnold? And is this a guy that you guys would target? But talk about these guys, Jacob Eason, Grier, Locke, and so forth. Anyone attract you guys?
For me personally, I mean, Eason, no. He's just a big quarterback. He's a Colts, was a 4th round pick, and they're out there trying to look for a starter, trying to trade for Carson Wentz. So that tells you a lot about Jacob Eason. And that's after a year of sitting behind Philip Rivers. So Drew Lock is a guy in Denver that I really wasn't a big fan of coming out of Missouri. And actually, he's a guy that I think Trubisky is going to go to Denver and be able to compete with him for a starting job there. So he's a guy that doesn't have his starting job wrapped up. So I'm not a Drew Lock fan. Will Grier, you can pass on him as well. Darnold does give you some intrigue, but again, at what cost, right? You're talking about a 1st round pick, 20th overall. I'm passing on that as well. So even though he's still young, I think he still has a chance to develop into a quality starter. But I'm not giving up a 1st round pick for Sam Darnold. I'd rather go get one of these 5 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, we can say it over and over and over again like a broken record. We got to address our quarterback position in this draft. As far as those guys that we just put up, Greer's a pass, Eason's a pass. Actually, I like the Drew Lock kid. I really did. Watching that kid play live, we went up to when I was at Mississippi State, we went up to Missouri in a driving rainstorm and watched that kid throw the ball with like a foot of rain on the ground. And I mean, he was as crisp as could possibly be. I think the kid has really natural, really good arm talent. And I mean, he just hasn't quite developed yet. But again, we keep on talking about guys that are either damaged goods or underdeveloped or, been passed around or have attitude issues or are disgruntled, whatever the case may be. Let's just get our guy in the draft. Let's stop messing around with all this other stuff and just get one of these 5 guys in the 1st round. I think Bears Nation's gonna be pretty happy.
See, I'd be okay if they go and make a move, get their guy in the 1st round, and then if they start the season with Nick Foles as a quarterback. Now I know everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, Nick Foles again," but you know what? Get this guy in a whole off season. Get him a solid offensive line. I'm not talking about a great offensive line, but a solid offensive line. He knows the system. To start off the season with Nick Foles as your veteran, bridge quarterback, if you will, and then eventually, groom this young guy to maybe take over midway through the season, seeing how things develop. But I'd be okay with that as opposed to giving up draft capital to go get a Carson Wentz or even like Jimmy Garoppolo or something like that. It's like, those are better quarterbacks, but it's the compensation you're giving up, and then the cap numbers that you're going to be dishing out as well. Which, because if you remember, you can pay this guy a quarterback $20 million, you're gonna have to make some room on a salary cap somewhere. Is that, you talked about Akeem Hicks? Is that maybe getting rid of a guy like Akeem Hicks? I would hate to do that to bring in a guy like a Carson Wentz, for example, making $20+ million a year. So, bring a young guy, go get one of your first round guys. And then, if you have Nick Foles for, first, 4 or 5 weeks of the season, I'm okay with that.
I'm with you. And, I like the idea of potentially starting with Nick Foles at the quarterback. And don't at me, don't throw bricks and this is just a kind of a temporary thing to allow the rookie quarterback a little time to acclimate. And I do believe that Nick Foles can do a more than adequate job if he has the protection. And so, improving the offensive line is of a high priority, but I wanted to share something with you that I read in Brad Biggs's Q&A column. Somebody sent them a question saying, you got to draft an offensive lineman first. You got to do it because that just doesn't matter. And I've actually seen some of the comments in the chat room too, with that same philosophy. Well, first of all, this draft is going to be really deep with offensive linemen. So you're going to find a plug and play offensive lineman in the second, third, maybe even the fourth round. But Brad's response to that question was, do you want would you have a Tom Brady playing, how did he phrase this? Now I'm drawing a brain cramp, but he said, would you want Tom Brady playing in front of a poor offensive line or a great offensive line playing for a terrible quarterback? And I think that the answer is easy. You want the quarterback first. Because the quarterback can still make plays if the protection breaks down. I mean, if it's a putrid offensive line and he's not getting to drop back 3 steps and there's people all over him on every play, then we
saw that last week, didn't we? With Mahomes getting
that's right. And even Mahomes, though, was courageous in trying to create some time and escaping the rush, even with a bad toe. So I just feel like everyone needs to kind of pump the brakes a little bit on the offensive line. We've got the resources, the draft resources to pick up a good offensive lineman in day 2 of the draft. You've got to address the quarterback day 1, first and foremost. There's no doubt about it.
100%.
So Neil, you want to go? Because I have two ways of attacking that particular statement. Do you want to go first, or you want to?
Go ahead.
All right. So for me, I'm kind of on the opposite there, and so I obviously the quarterback is the most important position on offense. But we saw last week, we just pointed out with Mahomes, if you don't have an offensive line that can give that quarterback, no matter how great they are, time back there to get rid of the football and go through a progression, that quarterback's going to look like crap, right? So Tom Brady, the Buccaneers have a damn good offensive line, and they invested the first round pick last year in Tristan Wirfs, who, the kid from Iowa was probably going to be an all-pro pretty damn soon. So, the offensive line is important. The thing with the Bears, though, is I don't think after what we saw, that combination that they had at the end of the season. Now, some people are not going to agree, but I think that offensive line has a making, especially the interior of a solid unit, right? We talked about the combination, however they mix it up there with Whitehair, Mustafa, James Daniels coming back, and then also Alex Barr's in there. So that combination, that interior, I think is a solid group to start off with. And I think we talked about Leno being okay and solid at left tackle. It's just we got to go get a right tackle, right? So I think that's something where you can attack in the draft. I saw a column today where they're kind of predicting the Bears undrafted free agents, and Fetty came up, and the columnist said, "Oh, you got to bring him back for at least a 1 or 2 year." Hell no, I'm not bringing him back at Fetty. For what? Yeah, he played okay at right tackle, but I'm going to go get myself a kid from college, whether it's in that second, third round. Like Aldo said, this is going to be a deep draft in terms of tackles. We're going to bring a kid in from college, or even if you pass that up, right? So, and I'm not advising, but if you pass up the kid from college, there's going to be a lot of teams up against the cap this year, and you're going to be able to bring in a kid like an Affetti, probably even better, for on a 1-year vet minimum kind of deal. So, that's the one area that I'm going to look at to concentrate in terms of the Bears offensive line to solidify and fix. Once I got that fixed, then I got my offensive line there, in my opinion. And I think a guy like Nick Foles will be okay there. And I also think that's now gives me the opportunity to go get that quarterback. So offensive line is vitally important. I believe that a good football team is solid up front, both offense and defensive line, and then you build from there. So, but I don't think the Bears offensive line, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think they're in that bad a shape after we saw that combination that formed towards the tail end of the season, that interior 3. I think Leno's okay at left tackle, and then just we got to get a right tackle.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's probably 5 guys on day 2 that we can go and get if we wanted to. are we going to have to make trades maybe to position ourselves if you know the pick and start getting a little bit slim maybe, but I really think that, you know, like you said, Danny, all we need really right now is to solidify that right tackle spot. Bobby Massey is frail and old, and then, you know, Jermaine Ifedi has cement block feet. Why do we have to bring that guy back? We're not bringing that guy back. Hell no. Right. We got 4 guys in the middle. Again, you know, we talk about it over and over again. We got 4 guys in the middle that can play, and that's a great problem to have. We got Leno on the left, and he's at the very worst average, right? You can win with average. As long as he's able to move, as long as he's able to compete, you can win with average. Right tackle, we don't have anybody there right now. That's what we need to address on day 2. And really, like, for my comfortability in the second round, I'm getting my future right tackle in the second round, and then the third round we're going to go and try and get an athlete, I think, or maybe somebody to potentially replace Dane Trevathan. But our first 2 picks in this draft need to be quarterback 1, and then number 2 right tackle.
See, my fear is that they go get this veteran quarterback, right? Whether it's a trade or whatnot, and then they totally, you know, not even use the first round pick on a quarterback, and now we're talking about the 4th round pick, and they're bringing in a guy like Jamie Newman, or maybe a 5th round pick, and they're bringing in a guy like, I don't know, pick a name, you know, like a Shane Buechele or something like that, you know, and that's going to be the development. You know, there are 5 guys in this draft that are first round grades. Go get one of those 5 guys. Then if you have, like I said, Nick Foles or another, you know, pick the veteran of your choice starting for you. I'm good with that. Second round, get your offensive lineman, your right tackle, and then we, like Niel said, 3rd, 4th, whatever picks then we fill in spots. We get receivers, we get linebackers, we get edge guys, safeties, and all these guys. You know, we bring them in, but no, offensive right tackle and quarterback for me, and I think Niel as well. Those got to be your first 2 picks.
Correct.
I love it. And so what we will do as we approach the draft is we will solidify the order of those top 5 quarterbacks. And then in the event that one of those 5 doesn't fall to 20 or we cannot move up to select one of those guys, then we'll have a plan B in place, whether it's an offensive lineman. There's actually a couple of guys who are outside the top needs that the Bears have, quarterback and offensive line, that I would consider in round 1. For instance, Carlos Basham, that edge rusher. I've been looking at some of his tape, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this guy falls to number 20, and the top 5 quarterbacks are gone. Should we look at a guy like Basham or somebody of that quality? Danny's already shaking his head. No.
Well, it's not that I like Basham. I just don't think he's a natural fit for this scheme, for this system, especially if you're going to run that 3-4 system. I think he's more of a 4-3 and possibly even an interior defensive tackle. So I think, you know, I think he's a guy that's a high motor, high energy kind of guy who was very productive at Wake Forest in terms of getting after the quarterback, had a solid showing at the Senior Bowl, you know, in practices and in the game as well, I thought so. But I just don't think he's a nice fit there. But if you're talking about an explosive edge guy or possibly even an explosive receiver, like say, for example, a Jalen Waddle, a guy who's expected to go in the top 10, 15 picks, if he's there at 20 and all your quarterbacks are gone, you know, do you make do you reach for a receiver there? You know, we talked about a couple of times, you know, Kyle Pitts, you know, I don't expect him to be there, but the tight end from Florida, you know, do you bring him in? And now you have you know, if you want a Gronkowski Hernandez kind of combination where you have your Cole Kmet as your Y, your interior, your inline blocking tight end. And now you have an athlete, a freak like, you know, Kyle Pitts at tight end. So there are different options. You know, there's a number of ways we can go, right, with this 20th pick. But I think we all agree here that the first and foremost has got to be that quarterback.
No argument there. All right, let's move on our discussion to want to discuss with you guys a little bit about the hiring of the former Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator, Mike Pettine. He is now with the Chicago Bears in a role as senior defensive assistant. And first of all, my first reaction was, this is an excellent hire. You know, first of all, because of the intel that he can provide about the Green Bay Packers, but also he's a damn good defensive coordinator. He's had a lot of success with the Green Bay Packers. Statistically, they were among the top 10 for a lot of the categories. I like this guy. What do you guys think?
I think it's an awesome move.
Go ahead.
I think it's an awesome move, specifically for the one thing that you mentioned about how he, you know, has spent the past 3 years in Green Bay and has all this intel, and he's ran a great show over there at Green Bay. Top 10 D in 2020, ninth in yards, 8th red zone touchdown percentage, 10th in sacks. Only one team last year was able to put up over 400 yards on this defensive outfit, and that was the Indianapolis Colts. Conversely, the Bears had given up three 400-plus yard performances last year. He's given up 39 touchdowns, 18 turnovers. So as far as a touchdown turnover ratio defensively, really good. No BS type of guy. He's from Eastern PA, just a little bit north of Philly. A lot of that really gruff, no nonsense, no BS, intensity that he brings to a defense that needs that. We don't need a soft-spoken guy that's going to be kumbaya with this defensive outfit. The Bears are all about intensity and toughness and hardcore physical play, and that's what I think he brings. I don't think there's ever a problem with having way too many intelligent guys in the room figuring it out.
Yeah, we got a question here from Jeremy. He says, what is Pettine's actual responsibility? And from what I understand, he is basically going to be a consultant. He's going to work with Sean Desai in formulating the defensive packages for schemes for the upcoming opponent and just provide some mentorship, for lack of a better way of putting it. I think it's still Sean's job. He's the defensive coordinator. I don't think he's going to come in here and override. I mean, there will be a problem in the Bears' performance if those guys are fighting for power, but I don't see Mike Pettine as that type of guy. I think he accepted this job knowing that Sean is the guy. Danny, your thoughts on Pettine?
Yeah, it's a good hire in my opinion. The size of a young kid or young guy, I should say not a kid, but a young guy that's going to be a defensive coordinator for the first time in his career. And you have a guy like Pettine who's been around the block, who's been a head coach, who's been a defensive coordinator in a couple different spots. So he's a guy that he's going to be lending his ear to him, and he's also going to give him some advice. So the one thing that they talked about was obviously Desai being a disciple of Vic Fangio, the assumption was the system's going to be similar to what Fangio ran as opposed to what Pagano did. But Penn also apparently was on the same staff with Fangio back with Baltimore early on in both their careers. So, but the other thing is curious is Penn's been on with Rex Ryan, and he's been a defensive coordinator both with Buffalo and with the Jets. So obviously Rex is known for being that aggressive blitzing type of system. So will Penn bring some of that element as well and include it with Desai? And so that way they, because obviously Fangio wasn't a big blitzer. Fangio was more of a guy of disguising his coverages, pre-snap, confusing the quarterback, and then allowing the front four guys to go ahead and generate all the pressure. So, we saw that clip there. You show the Packers right there. You saw Jair Alexander, the corner, being blitzed a lot. So I think, I'd be curious to see if there's going to be some more exotic blitzes that are going to be, kind of thrown in there to go along with all that pre-snap, disguise coveraging and all that stuff. So it should be exciting. Hopefully that this combination is going to help bring that Bears defense back to relevance and where it was, back in 2018 under Fangio. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the two here work together.
I got two quick sound bites to play for you. The first one is from Aaron Rodgers. He was asked about Mike Pettine's defense and what he saw in practices, and he gave a really good compliment, and it may also have been a knock on Dom Capers, the former defensive coordinator, before Pettine arrived.
They're giving you pressures where they can actually get home. We haven't had that issue in a while where they scheme up pressures to have a free guy on the play.
And that is so important. A lot of times with under Chuck Pagano, I saw blitzes being called and everybody was being blocked. It's like you're sitting in 7-8 guys and everybody's been picked up. The blitz is so ineffective. And what Rodgers is saying there, that Pettine, with his blitz formulations, is that he's scheming ways to really get guys open. And so there's a lot of trickery involved, a lot of disguising things. And so that is exciting for me because we need to get the most that we can out of those edge guys, Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was talking about in terms of disguising coverages, pre-snap and confusing the quarterbacks in terms of where the guy is coming from if they're blitzing at all. And then the reason why you're talking about the blitzes under Pagano are being picked up is because they've done their film study. They knew the type of personnel they're in, the type of alignment they're in that most likely this guy's going to blitz, so they're prepared for it. And that's why they were able to pick up the blitzer. So, how many times under Fangio we saw Roquan Smith, or Dane Trevathan blitz up the middle, untouched, and get to the quarterback and generate pressure that way. So that's what I'm looking for here is the combination of Fangio's coverage technique and scheming, and then with Pettine disguising stuff and then bringing some pressure when needed. Hopefully, like I said, bringing that Bears defense back to relevance.
Mm. Now, this is Pettine, and this was after the Bears game Week 1, 2019. The very first season, the Smith guys were there, Ladarius and Preston. They just confused the heck out of Mitchell Trubisky in that game. And Pettine was talking about his defensive philosophy and his schemes. And so listen carefully, because he's going to say something that's going to get all of us saying, oh no, he's going to do that. But listen to what he says, and then we'll talk about it on the other end. It's about a minute long.
Yeah, my history, as you know, has always been looking for the versatility, and I think that's important for a couple different reasons, as I've talked about here before, that you can use guys in a variety of ways. Some of our pressures where we dropped some of those outside backers. I think if you get guys that are only one-dimensional, it doesn't take an offense long to figure out that, hey, this is what this guy does, and they don't do anything else with them. So there's a lot of things that we can do schematically that it's the exact same call, but we just put different guys in different roles, and that we're not going to put them in a position that they can't do. But when you have those guys that are versatile, any time we can do something that's easy for us, that's hard on the offense, because they do the same thing to us. So anytime we can do that, that's a plus. And then the versatility part too, it also helps you with your depth, that when you have a guy that can do multiple things, that an outside linebacker that you can cross-train as defensive lineman can play end, or outside backer you can cross-train to play off the ball, or a safety that can also play nickel, a corner that can slide in to play safety. I mean, those types of things. You always want to be in the mode of, we got our best 11 out there. And sometimes if everybody's kind of locked into their position and you're just bumping the next guy up on the depth chart, that's not always going to be the case, having your best 11.
A lot of what he says there I love, but we don't want to see Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn dropping it into coverage again. So dissect that soundbite for me, guys. Niel, I'll start with you.
Part of that sounded a little bit like a recent coaching hire trying to spit that exact same thing out, but butchering it completely. We're going to do things that are, wait, is it easy for us or I think it's easy for us, but hard for them. And the easier it is, that's what that sounded like. He was trying to, say the, either way, I think that what he's talking about is relying on the personnel. And that's what I keep harping on over and over and over again. And what I think Nagy failed at over and over and over again this past year is relying on your personnel, getting your best 11 on the field. Stop worrying so much about formations and schemes and all that kind of thing. Get the best 11 guys on the field that could stop the offense and formulate a plan around those guys, right? And if you have the kind of versatility where you have multiple guys that could do multiple things in multiple positions and have multiple value, then, I mean, you're really cooking with gas at that point.
I just don't know if the Bears have a lot of those guys. I mean, Eddie Jackson is a center field safety. He doesn't have that versatility to play in the box. Robert Quinn is a 4-3 defensive end pass rusher. That's where he's at his best. If you look at his career historically, that's where he's performed his best, not dropping into coverage. And so there's other players on this defense who don't have that versatility that Pettine is talking about there. I don't know, Danny, do you see that differently than I do?
Well, in terms of the whole drop and bang coverage thing, I mean, I know that's it. Just seems like with Pagano, it was always like the wrong moment. Like when we needed a stop or a rush, and there's Mack or Quinn dropping back in coverage. So I maybe it's the timing of when you call that particular player that design of that play. So, but I think with Pettine, and I hope that he brings some of this aggressiveness that he got under Rex Ryan was when you disguise your coverages and you drop those two guys back in a particular call. you'll bring in other guys off whether it's a slot corner or the cornerback coming off the edge, and you kind of generate some pressure though. That's what I'm saying. I'm curious to see how that all works out. I agree with you, Aldo. I think Mac and Robert Quinn are better going upfield after the quarterback as opposed to dropping back and retrieving. I know once in a while that the coordinators get a little cute and they want to kind of catch the quarterback off guard and all that stuff. But now we'll see how it goes. I think we had a question in the chat in terms of how we're going to identify Pettine with Nagy if they both were advisors. I think that was a funny question, but I'm curious. I wonder how that's going to work too. I wonder if the side's going to be on the sideline and the Pettine's going to be up in the booth, or vice versa, or how that's going to work. So it's very something that hopefully we'll get to training camp this year. There'll be a training camp where fans can come and attend, and we can see how that dynamic's working with them in terms of how they're putting this defense together.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk a little bit about the three guys that were drafted by Ryan Pace in the 2020 NFL draft that played defense. Clearly, the cornerback, Jalen Johnson, I think we're all giving him a thumbs up. And while he had some challenges, he was burned on several plays, but he was clearly picked on. Kyle Fuller had kind of an easy season when you think back at it. It was Johnson who was being picked at for the most part, and but I think I would give him a B+ as a grade. What do you guys think? Starting with you, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, I'm high on the kid. I was high on the kid when they made the pick in the second round, and I think nothing. This rookie season had nothing to do to deteriorate. In terms of my confidence in his kid going forward. Started from day one. The only concern I have really is that shoulder injury. This is a thing. This shoulder that's happened multiple times now, dating back to his college career at Utah. As long as the kid stays healthy, he started all 13 games. Week 1 starter. He had 44 tackles, 34 solo tackles. So I remember in the whole draft process, I was talking about this is one of those kids. He's an aggressive guy. He's a guy who comes on downhill, clicks his heels, and transitions real quick, and it has no fear in terms of coming up and being a solid tackler and good in run defense. So 34 solo tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 15 passes defense, and I think that might be, if not top 5, it's definitely like right up there in terms of in the league for defensive backs being able to get the ball, his hand on the ball. So a guy that I think just kind of continue to build off of this rookie campaign and just get better and better as the years go along, as long as he's got to stay healthy.
Yeah, I love the kid. I mean, he really battled this year, highly competitive, got picked on, took it like a G, came back, short memory. You love the cornerbacks that can go ahead and give up big plays and to have short memories to come back and compete and make a play on the next one. I mean, that's the biggest thing about playing quarterback, isn't it? I mean, being able to have that kind of competitiveness. And I said it before, as much as we like to rag on Ryan Pace for making just crap draft picks and crap decisions, this was a phenomenal decision. Him and the receiver were 2 phenomenal, picks that were made this year by, Nagy or by Pace and that group. So, I mean, massive props. Again, Danny, that's my biggest fear too, is how that shoulder is going to look, again, hopefully we're able to go ahead and see, some of these, training camp practices and report back to you guys.
Exactly. Now, their next draft pick, I believe it was Trevis Gibson was picked before Kendall Vilder, if I recall correctly. So we didn't get to see Gibson much. I mean, I think he had probably half dozen snaps from the starting defense or the defense, and the other snaps were special teams. But based on what you guys saw from the college tape, where is your confidence level that this guy could be a contributor in 2021 and beyond? Danny?
Well, the one thing that was encouraging with Gibson is in the limited snaps he played, he did have 3 quarterback hits. So this is a guy that did generate some pass rush when given the opportunity. So, he's a guy that at Tulsa made a living in the backfield. He had 25.5 tackles for losses, to go along with 13 sacks in his career. The sack numbers really weren't that big, other than his last season where he had 8. He's 6'3", 261 is what he comes in at, and he's a guy that's going to be like that outside linebacker. So we'll be curious to see, if what they do in terms of their defense. Is he going to be the third guy now rotating in? Are they going to be able to maintain Mingo, or he's an unrestricted free agent? Because I think Mingo played pretty well as well too, surprisingly. So Gibson is a kid that's got some talent. I'm just curious to see what his next step in development is going to be. So obviously the more reps, the more snaps he sees, I expect to see more pressure and more production as well. So a little bit different body than what we're used to out there in terms of, remember we had Leonard Floyd, the more athletic, the fluid mover. This guy's more of a he's more of a presence at the line of scrimmage than Leonard Floyd was. He's a guy that penetrates in between those gaps and gets in the backfield and makes some plays. So he's another kid that I got my eye on in terms of, I want to see what his next progression is going to be as an NFL player.
Niel, you feel the same way, huh?
Pretty much. I mean, carbon copy. He's only seen action in 7 games this year, so it's really hard to draw a conclusion based on what we've seen. I do like the fact that we have a big guy that's able to play special teams. You need those kind of guys. You need those back of the roster type of dudes that just go balls out on special teams, on kickoff, whatever it may be, and go down and make plays. But let's see what he does this offseason. I mean, there were a couple guys on defense at Tulsa that were really eye-opening like type dudes. This was one, and then Zaven Collins was the other one. And he's probably, I mean, there's a lot of people saying that he might be a first-round pick in this year's draft. So, Tulsa is able to go ahead and churn out some players. So, hopefully this is the type of kid that progresses from year 1 to year 2 in the offseason and ends up working his way into a role.
Now, the next draft pick that we want to talk about is Kindle Vildor, who did see some snaps because of the injury to Jalen Johnson. I've still hold a lot of promise for this guy. When you look at his college tape, it was pretty phenomenal. Danny and I got to see him up close at the Senior Bowl. Danny, let me begin with you. Kindle Vildor, you still holding out hope that this guy could potentially be maybe the slot starter in a year?
Yeah. I was pounding the table. What was it, week 8 for this kid to get more action? Herman, Duke Shelley, because the Buster Screen experiment for me was over with, a long time ago. So I mean, Vildor came in. Yeah, he got picked on. He's a rookie, from Georgia Southern, so lower level competition. So it was a big jump for him. But same thing as we saw in the Senior Bowl. Although he started off the week kind of rough. But towards the end of the week, he got his feet underneath him and he got more, acclimated in terms of the competition, the speed of the competition, and then made a hell of an interception in the game itself. So, with Vildor, going back to his career at Georgia Southern, what I liked about him was he was quick. He's a guy that was able to transition out of his back pedal quick. And another guy that was, in terms of coming down and run support was fearless. He had 94 tackles. In his career, he had 9 tackles for loss, 9 interceptions, and 25 pass defense. So this is a guy that shows some aggressiveness in terms of run defense and also the ability to get his hands on the football. So shows me that ball skills. And when in his 16 games he played, he had 1 start, 13 solo tackles, and a pass defense. So I think this is a kid that also is I'm very high on in terms of what his development is going to proclude to next season. So whether he's a slot corner or he's competing for more playing time, whether it's backing up one of the starting corners, I hope it's a slot corner position because I think he's a guy that has the shiftiness, the quickness to be able to play a two-way going on a quick shifty receiver in the inside. So we'll see how that goes. But and then we talked about a guy that can blitz off as a slot corner. This guy's got some pretty good speed coming off that corner. If you're going to blitz him, if we're talking about disguising coverages and all that stuff, so he could be play a big role for them coming next season. But yeah, I'm real high on Vildor.
That one PBU that he had should have been a pick, and that still drives me absolutely nuts, man.
Yeah.
Just went right through his hands. It was so beautiful. He recognized the play, flipped his hips, snapped to the ball, just goes right through his hands. Like, come on, man. We know you have ball skills. Just catch the ball, man. Right. Unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, I love his aggressiveness. That kid really plays tough. And I think this kid's got an incredibly high ceiling. I can't wait to see how he progresses this offseason as well.
Excellent. And when we had Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl here, what was it, 2 months ago, we asked him about Kindle. He said, you guys just be patient. This guy's going to play for you guys. And so it's a promise that I think he's going to keep for us. All right, we're going to head to the last segment of the show here, and the guys are going to talk about wide receivers. We know that this team needs some wide receivers, so I'm going to start with just a general question. But first, I'll tell our audience that we're going to do a more in-depth look at this wide receiver crop on our next show. But I wanted the guys to offer, for the next 20 to 30 minutes, a kind of a high-level look at some of the top wide receivers. But my first question for you, Niel, is what does this class look like? Is this a deep wide receivers class, or is this a class where after the first couple of rounds, you're going to have to stumble on something special?
I think it's an interesting class for the from the standpoint that once we get past getting the quarterback situated, getting our right tackle situated, and I think that our third pick ought to be an inside linebacker to address the Dane Trevathan situation. That's probably our number 3 pick. Once we get to pick number 4, we're talking about late day 2 or early day 3. You have some incredible value. And I don't know about you, Danny, but I spent the past couple weeks looking at no less than 60 guys. And that tells you how deep this class is. There's probably 60 guys that could potentially have a draft pick of a draft grade of some sort. Obviously, there aren't going to be 60 guys drafted, but I think that's the kind of talent that you have floating around college football. And as I was saying on the last show, is that receivers these days are a dime a dozen. It's the ones that are difference makers are the ones that are going to go really high, and then you have to do a really good job of evaluating and scouting to see if you can find the right kind of guy that fits what you need him to do to fall into a certain role in your offensive scheme. And I think really that where we are going to be in this draft, talking about the Bears, where we're going to be in this draft, there's going to be some incredible value.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, in terms of the depth of the entire class, I mean, it's going to be very, very good. You're going to be able to get guys, like last year, got Darnell Mooney in the 5th round. Going to be able to get guys in the 5th, 6th round here. Going to be able to come in and contribute, whether it's on special teams as a rookie or in situational roles. Guys that are going to give you speed elements, dependent in size, whatever you're looking for. This class is going to give you. So I went into this and specifically looking for the Bears' needs, and this is where I've been since last offseason. I've been saying, we got to add more speed on offense, right? We got to add more speed at receiver. We're talking about guys that take the, top off of defense, home run hitters. We're talking about guys, get the ball in their hands, let them go horizontally and make some plays, make guys miss, make them miss in the open field and get big chunks that way. So, I've been going in and looking at those type of guys, guys that, might not necessarily be the 6'4", 6'5" guys, but more shifty, quicker, fast guys. Take a look at, it's a copycat league, right? Look at the Chiefs. They got guys, 5'7", 5'11", going running crossers across the field, in the middle of the field. Mahomes gets the ball to them, and the defender can't keep up with them. So that's how they get those big chunks, those big yards. So that's what I'm looking for right now. So, but going a little bit, in terms of the top of the class, there's a ton of stuff where you have superstar potential like Jamar Chase. The guy last year had maybe the best season that I've seen in recent history in college football, and he played with Justin Jefferson. He played with Joe Burrow and all the other guys, but he still put up 20 touchdowns last year. So, and he opted out this year. He didn't even play this year, and I think a lot of times he's kind of out of sight, out of mind. But he's, to me, I don't know about you, Niel, but he to me is the top of this receiver class. So his ability is about 6 feet, 208 pounds. He's a little bit bigger than Devontae Smith, who's number 2 on my list. But he gives you that element in terms of being able to go up and high point the ball, catch it in traffic and be a guy that gives you that right there, which is some deep speed, but also the ability to catch a slant, break some tackles and go 15, 20 yards for a big play as well. So a ton of players. There's a ton of guys that are going to be shifty, quick, guys in the 5'7", 5'8" range. We talked about a couple of them during Senior Bowl week. Kadarius Toney is a guy for me right now. He's number 5 overall in this class in my top 10, and he's a guy that I'm really high on. A guy that can jack of all trades. A guy that can punt return, kickoff return. You can give him the ball in jet sweeps. You can give him the ball on slip screens. You can have him run routes. He's a guy that definitely just makes plays whenever you get the ball in his hand. So there's a ton of guys. Dwayne Eskridge, we already talked about, the kid from Western Michigan. We talked about him prior to the Senior Bowl, and then he went down in Mobile and put on a show during the week. He was pretty much uncoverable in terms of creating separation in the one-on-ones. Another guy that really impressed a lot of scouts down there at the Senior Bowl. So those are the kind of guys I'm looking for the Bears. Quick, fast, shifty guys. There is one guy though that is a bigger guy. He's about 6'4", 6'3", 6'4". I think this guy has got a chance to be a really damn good receiver, and that's Terrace Marshall from LSU. He's a guy that was a third banana with LSU last couple of seasons, because he was behind Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and some of the other guys. But he's a guy that put up some numbers. I think he's got like 20-some touchdowns in the last 3 seasons. So this is a guy that's got some size. I was told he's going to run about a 4.45, 4.46. So if you're about 6'3", run 200 plus pounds, run a 4.46. This is going to be a guy that's going to be able to make plays. You can see here, he's going to be able to extend away from his frame. He's got nice, natural soft hands, plucks the ball out of the air nicely. Is going to be a red zone threat, most likely with that size of that frame. And again, his size, that speed combination is going to be lethal. I think this is a guy that really is flying under the radars, I think, in some circles. But I think this is a guy that kind of would give the Bears that big guy element, but also some speed as well. So definitely keep an eye on Terrence Marshall.
Oh, I like that. Nice find there. I had not heard much about him, so it's going to be fun to keep an eye on him. He could be the Kenny Galladay. We had on Lauren Cox, and he was telling me about Kenny Galladay from Northern Illinois back when he came into the draft, and I started watching some tape of him, and I was like, yeah, impressive. And now Kenny Galladay is one of the prized free agent wide receivers out there. So that's a good name. We'll take a look at some of his tape. Niel, who do you like?
Yeah, the Terrace Marshall kid. I love that kid. I have him, very high on day 2. The kid's just got size for days, man. Just length, big hands, go gadget arms. I mean, for his size, really good quickness and agility. I really honestly felt like he was going to probably run in the mid 4.5s. That's just me though. But I mean, this kid, you look at the way that LSU used him. They played him a lot in the slot, and at LSU, that got him in a ton of mismatch situations, which is in large part why he was so productive, especially this past year. Had they had functionality at quarterback,
right,
like they had the year before, he would have had probably a monster year. But I mean, you just think about if he had Jamar Chase next to him too, how much attention would have been taken away from him specifically. And there's also a third guy there, is Racey McMath, who is a guy that got invited to Senior Bowl, who has great size and really, I mean, throughout the course of his life as a prospect, has just been an intriguing late bloomer. I mean, he's been a late bloomer for life. He was that way in high school, sparsely recruited, had limited film, just enough to really, pique your interest. He's kind of like that 7'1" like Argentinian with the really hazy film that NBA scouts love to talk about a lot about. He kind of has that kind of intrigue to him, right? Very mysterious. Never a starter. Not much production at LSU, but has traits for days. That'll make the NFL salivate. Size, length, speed. Great first step, explosive tendencies. He is a long strider, has some wow splash plays. And that mystique will continue to grow through pro days. I expect him to perform really well with the lack of productivity and playing time. He's a guy that'll be highly coveted, in the later rounds as a developmental guy if we want to go ahead and get a potential sleeper late. But, as far as, the guys that we need to target, I really do believe that they're the Anthony Miller types, the guys you want to play in the slot that are shifty, that can be multiple, that, can get you in mismatches, that are going to run fast and be explosive and everything else. And obviously, we are not going to be in the running for any of those, mega difference makers that are probably going to go in the top 10. Talking about Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Jamar Chase. And I mean, those are three guys that really beauties in the eye of the beholder with all three of those guys. I personally have Devontae number 1. I have actually Jamar number 3 and Jalen Waddle number 2. And I mean, the biggest thing with Jalen Waddle for me is, how he's going to come back, from that injury, how he's going to look. Is he going to be equally as explosive? It's rare that an ankle injury like that takes you out for the year. So that'll be the interesting thing. But I mean, outside of that, like I said, you have tremendous value once you get to late day 2, early day 3, like the first 2 rounds of day 3. We talked about during the Senior Bowl show, Kadarius Toney. I've gotten word from a lot of scouts how, I mean, he really was probably the most talented dude there. You look at Amari Rodgers, who personally is my favorite to come in and be a plug-and-play guy. This kid is a 3-year starter at a national championship squad, playing at the highest level. He is a team captain, durable. And I love this one quote that I got from one of my closest contacts: classy wide receiver in all ways, right? Ultimate plug-and-play guy, the way he runs routes, the way he goes about his business, how tough he is. He's going to run fast. He's one of the guys that I look at to probably be, within the realm of, consideration somewhere in day 2. Shi Smith had an unbelievable Senior Bowl, and he's a guy that's risen fast up the boards. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that I really like, as well as Marquez Stevenson, who is just a speed demon. Those are the types of dudes that I look at it to really fill the role of being a difference-making slot guy, or to be a dangerous slot guy. Potentially also having the versatility to be on the outside, be as he pierce the safeties, take the top off, those types of things. Some guys that aren't really talked about as much that I think, are really interesting as you start getting into day 3. You talk about guys like Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore made probably the biggest splash of any receiver in his class in his first collegiate game, putting up over 200 yards of offense against Northwestern, day one. ESPN couldn't stop talking about how true freshman Rondale Moore was just dominating college football. Mm-hmm. And, he's had to deal with injuries. He's had to, he hasn't never played a full collegiate season. But, he's a guy that was supposed to play this year, but never ended up playing. He opted out, then opted back in and never played. There's a little bit of weirdness going on with that whole situation. And, Braun was never really too forthright and transparent about, what that was all about. I think his answer to that on one of the media conferences was, well, I hope he plays, right? So not really sure what the deal is there. We talk about guys before. I talked about guys before where specifically Mac Jones and some of these others where the interview process over the next couple of weeks is going to be massive. And I think he's going to be a big one, possibly even bigger than Jamie Newman, because I think Jamie Newman, his traits are what they are. Rondale Moore had he played this year like he was supposed to, Rondale Moore was a guy that could have gone probably late day one. He had that kind of explosiveness, that kind of game breaking ability. And he's a guy that also, you look at the way that he plays, he's a receiver that has running back skills. As soon as he catches the ball, he turns into a tailback and he's making people miss. And he's acting like he just took the ball out of the backfield. Love that about him. Josh Palmer is a guy that I think has, potentially late day 3 potential, but I have him right now as like an early day 3 guy. Arguably the most experienced guy on the list. He's going to get a lot of talk, a lot of looks. And then you have, some other really interesting guys like Anthony Schwartz from Auburn, who may end up being an Olympic sprinter next year. So you got to look out for that. That's going to come into play in the scouting process. You look at a guy like Tylan Wallace, who's going to run fast and has been extremely versatile and productive at Oklahoma State. Demetric Felton, we couldn't stop talking about Senior Bowl week with how he's really burst on. Then, you got some guys with size then, like Cornell Powell, who really had an amazing year emerged onto the scene, doubling his production from the previous 3 years. Guys like Sage Surratt, who, had a interesting week, wasn't able to finish it out down there in Mobile. Ben Skoranek, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Equinemius' his little brother, who was always. I got him in my top 10. St. Brown.
Really?
Yeah. I'm really intrigued by this kid. The only thing with him is, I'm sorry, let me cut you off, but the only thing with him is what's he going to run? He's right. He's probably a 4 or 5 guy, but I talk about, initial quickness off the line of scrimmage, his ability to go ahead and extend the body control, to be able to contour his body and adjust to a poorly thrown ball. Those back shoulder throws he's phenomenal at that. St. Brown is a kid that really impressed me. And like I said, he made my top 10. And Niel just went through a ton of guys that, like I said, we're going to be 4 or 5 rounds, 6 rounds in, and you're going to be able to find guys. You even mentioned the guys from Louisville. I like the Tutu Atwell, another short, small guy, but fast as heck. And Des Fitzpatrick, who is a bigger kid, but 6'2". He's more of an outside receiver. Atwell is more of an inside slot guy. But we're talking about these guys that are shifty, guys that can make plays. And this is the draft that you can go and get those kind of guys here as well. So, college football is producing these type of receivers now that are being successful in the NFL. So, I just want to circle back real quick on Marshall. We talked about Neil touched on his quarterback play was horrible this year, and he still ended up with 10 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So that's with horrible quarterback play at LSU. So, but yeah, if you're looking for a big guy, possession type, Sage Surratt, Trevon Grimes, you have it. You want his quick, flat, fast slot guys with, guys like Eskridge and Rondale Moore and something like that. Moore's size kind of concerns me a little bit. I think we'll have to see on that guy. But everything you want, speed, all that stuff, shifty route runners, all that stuff. This class has that.
What Alex Sims is speaking highly of Jalen Darden out of North Texas. Have you guys had a chance to look at any of his tape?
I haven't seen Darden yet.
I was able to watch Darden play SMU. Mm-hmm. I was looking at SMU for that quarterback and that receiver that they have, and Darden was a guy that really stuck out. Fast, explosive. He's a guy that he's going to get a lot of looks, and he's going to get a lot of consideration. I'm not sure where I have him right now because I haven't done a deep enough dive into really evaluating this kid's strengths yet. But as a guy that really flashed when you weren't expecting anyone to flash on the other side of the ball, he was really interesting. I mean, you see his size right there, 5'9", 174. That's going to be something that the scouts are going to talk about. And we'll see exactly what he measures in at pro day, and see what he runs and everything else. All these numbers are going to be incredibly transparent over the next 2 months. Usually numbers that aren't transparent whatsoever are going to be shared like wildfire because we have no combine. These are the combine numbers. Yeah. So he's one that's really intrigued me.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk right now about, the challenge that NFL scouts are going through because there is no combine, because the pro days are going to be handled in a manner that may not be uniform for all of the players. And so the talk is that tape is going to be more important than ever before. And you really need a scouting department that is excellent at looking at tape and also working the phones and talking to people who know the player, family members, and getting all this intel that normally scouts would get visiting the campus, talking face to face with people, but now it's about working the phones, getting the intel, and really studying the tape and making those projections now that a lot of times can be very difficult for scouts, but it's a unique challenge that all the scouts are facing this year.
Yeah, I was talking before, Aldo, about how this time right now, once you get out of Senior Bowl, you got the month of February, and then you have the month of March for these NFL franchises, whether it be the coaching staffs or the assistants to the coaching staff, or the personnel guys getting on campus, sitting these guys in the rooms, putting them through workouts on the field. This is crucial time that hopefully isn't being lost. And whatever version of being able to salvage that process, I hope we're being creative about it. And when I say we, I talk about these franchises in conjunction with these kids and their families, in conjunction with these schools. Hopefully, we're being really creative about it, so we're not losing. This is it's a critical time right now to be able to get guys in a room and work them out and ask the questions and watch them on the board and listen to them articulate themselves. I mean, this is some pretty critical time where guys are able to prove their worth or answer those tough questions when you got the light on you, the interrogation room. This is tough stuff. Hopefully it's not being done over Zoom. Hopefully it's not only limited to film. Hopefully we're able to, hopefully these NFL guys are able to get around and see these kids.
All right. Again, I promise our followers lots of more wide receiver talk on the next show. I can't wait. Just listening to you guys talk about some of these players has me really, really fired up. And we're also going to have a very special guest. I'm trying to get a confirmation first before I announce the name, but trust me, we will have a special guest next week. And I got a couple of questions for you before we wrap up, guys. Number one is, under what circumstance do you see trading out of that 20th spot and acquiring more draft picks? So, for instance, let's say the top 5 are gone. We weren't able to trade up. Would you then consider trading that 20th spot to acquire another second and third, other multiple draft picks? Or are you pretty much going to be banging the table and say, let's stay at 20. We can get a really, really good player, a plug and play player at this position or that position. So just as a hypothetical, Niel, your thoughts?
I think that you really need to use that pick and get the quarterback. If we're not able to figure out a way to efficiently do that without giving up too much draft capital or without too many resources that's already on the roster, I think the way that you orchestrate a trade back is if it's to address some of these other needs with position groups that do have a ton of depth. That's the only way that makes sense to me. But I think that the biggest effort that needs to go into this draft is figuring out the most efficient way possible to move up 10, 15 spots to go and get a guy, because it's seeming even more likely as the days go on that all these guys are going to be gone by pick 10. But again, like if we end up having, an additional second round pick, an additional third round pick, these second day picks are going to be huge in terms of, finding still plug and play guys, immediate starters, immediate difference makers in some way, shape or form. And, again, we have probably 3 or 4 holes that desperately need to be filled. And if you're able to go ahead and use that as an alternative method to be able to fill those holes and still somehow, some way manage to get a quarterback that makes sense, then I think that's the only way that's acceptable. But I think really what it comes down to, I'm going to be the one pounding the table to go ahead and move up 10, 15 spots to get the QB1 position solidified.
Yeah, me too. I prefer, obviously, with Niel, like he said, to move up and get that quarterback. But just, for the sake of the question here, assuming that they stay at 20, they don't move up, and all 5 quarterbacks are gone, unless the top rated player at the position of need, offensive tackle, receiver, has fallen. Edge rusher, for example. I would go ahead and entertain trade offers and try and go back. Even if you move back to the tail end of the first round, or even completely out of the first round, generally teams that move into the first round, move up, are giving up next year's first round as well. So this is a good way for you to recoup some draft capital that you've lost, and also move back and get some more picks for this year. Like I said, offensive line is a deep position, receiver is a deep position. Those are 2 areas that the Bears need. Inside linebacker, I still have to go through all the tape, but I mean, just off the top, there are a couple of players that intrigue me. So if you move back there, you get a couple guys there, that'd be nice to have as well. And then talk about that second and third tier, if you will, of quarterbacks. Obviously, if you don't get your first guys, you're gonna have to kind of position yourself, probably, hopefully, to get yourself in a position to get one of those second tier guys, whether it's Trask or Mond or Ellinger, whoever they've deemed. So if the quarterbacks are gone, we haven't moved up to get them. We're at 20, and a Jalen Waddle is not there, or a Kyle Pitts we talked about earlier. Some of these guys that are top premier talent at positions that you may not need, but these are top players that you cannot bypass. Or edge rusher that's fallen that you didn't expect to be there. I would go ahead and try and entertain trade offers and move back. You know me, Aldo. I love more picks.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I would only get rid of draft capital if it's a sure thing. I mean, even with the Khalil Mack trade, while I definitely wanted Khalil Mack, but it really hurt all the capital that was sacrificed to pick up a premier edge rusher. I'm always of the school of maybe we can find our own Khalil Mack in the draft. And but my other question for you, and maybe this is the final one, is what can the Bears take away from what the Bucs did in 2020 to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl? What can the Chicago Bears take away as a learning thing? I mean, I immediately think, okay, they did a great job in acquiring Tom Brady. And then it wasn't just about acquiring him and then fitting him into Bruce Arians' offense, because that didn't work. Their offense did not work very well with Bruce Arians, down the field passing, taking those 5-7 step drops. That offense worked once Tom Brady got them to let him play his style of ball. So the biggest learning thing that I got from the Bucs winning their championship is the head coach listening to his quarterback. But is there anything that you guys learned from the Bucs that perhaps Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy can apply to the Chicago Bears to help expedite their growth and get them into a Super Bowl?
For me, it just refortified what I've been saying all along is you build a solid foundation at both the offensive and defensive line positions, and the Bucs have put in multiple first round picks at both sides, right? You got Vita Vea, defensive tackle, you have Tristan Wirfs, you have Elliot Marpet at I think it was a third round pick. So they've invested draft capital into both their offensive and defensive lines. Obviously, Shaq Barrett was a real good free agent pickup. Jason Pierre-Paul was a good trade as well. So, their offensive and defensive lines were solid. Were really, really good. And I think that always gets overlooked or overshadowed because of Tom Brady and some of the offensive weapons they have on the outside. But without that offensive line giving them time, Tom Brady wouldn't be up there, making all these plays downfield and so on and so forth. So, and then of course, we saw what that defensive front did to, Patrick Mahomes, someone that, they didn't score a touchdown in the game. And who would have thought heading into the Super Bowl that the Chiefs would not score a single touchdown in that football game? So for me, it always starts up front, offensive, defensive line. You build from there, and then you build your way out. So that to me just fortified it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the other thing that stood out to me is that leadership truly is everything. You know, I forget which show I was actually listening to today or yesterday, but it went into the minute that Tom Brady stepped foot in that franchise, Bruce Arians essentially just went ahead and said, okay, do what you got to do. And Tom Brady ran the show, at least from an offensive standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And plenty of players, if we were really paying attention to that broadcast during the Super Bowl the other day, they admitted that, yeah, Tom Brady was the leadership. It wasn't Bill Belichick. It wasn't Kraft. It wasn't the coaching staff. It wasn't a situation where any quarterback could come in here and win. It was Tom Brady was the system.
Right.
And so Tom Brady goes to Tampa, brings a couple of buddies with him, and all of a sudden the culture immediately changes. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you talk about bringing somebody in that has that kind of transcendent effect from a leadership standpoint, I mean, it really does. It infects the clubhouse like a virus, no pun intended.
The other side note to that Buccaneers championship was, if you guys, I don't want to bring up bad memories, but their general manager is Jason Light. He was a finalist for the Bears GM position when they fired Angelo. Him and Phil Emery, and the Bears picked Phil Emery. Mm-hmm. And then Bruce Arians was a finalist for the head coaching position between him and Mark Trestman, and then the Bears picked Mark Trestman. So the Bears had the right people in the building. They just made the wrong decisions. So that's
right.
all.
That's right.
Leadership, not only from the quarterback position, but also from ownership and management.
Right.
Yeah. And, that's another thing, Niel, to your point about turning the team over to Brady. That's the kind of guy that you want to find. Brady, of course, came out of Michigan. He was kind of a part-time starter there, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a full-time starter, but he showed a willingness to win, that will to win that you want out of your players. And so he gets to the NFL, and that will to win is intensified to the point where, holy cow! I mean, he's from a athletic standpoint, from a quarterback throwing standpoint, he's not the greatest of all time. But when you factor in his leadership skills, when you factor in his will to win, yeah, he is the greatest of all time. I hate to admit it because I dislike the guy so much, but I respect what he has accomplished as a leader and the results that he's delivered, the longevity, taking care of himself so that he can play at that top level, pushing his teammates to be better. That's the kind of stuff that we desperately need here in Chicago. We need a quarterback to come in, to be drafted this April, May, and become the quarterback for the next 15 years and lead us to Super Bowl after Super Bowl. That's what we desperately need. And that's what this show is about. We're going to find that quarterback, and then we're going to call Ryan Pace and say, okay, do whatever you need to do to get this guy. If you can't get this guy, then get this guy. Give him that priority list. All right, guys, any final thoughts or shout outs or anything that you want to do?
I'm just getting ready. The pro days start tomorrow, so I think it's Trevor Lawrence has his pro day tomorrow. I think Clemson has their pro day tomorrow, so that's going to be interesting to see how. There's no mystery there. He's going to go number one overall. I just want to see some of the other players on Clemson, see how they do as well. But it's starting to heat up. It's going to be different than what we're used to seeing. So. Definitely got to pay attention and see what's going on, whatever they make available on TV or make available on the internet, to go ahead and see some of these things. So I'm just getting ready to hit the grind. But it was curious. You're talking about a quarterback with leadership and the will to win. Isn't there someone that I keep pointing out that's that leadership, that will to win? Plays in
Danny Hookham.
I had to throw it in there. Just throw it in there.
You know what? That is the one thing that I love about Sam Ehlinger, is that he does have that makeup. There is no doubt about it that he does have that makeup, and that maybe, because again, I freaking love John DeFilippo. Maybe you bring in an Ehlinger to work with a DeFilippo, and maybe he turns him into somebody better than Chase Daniel.
Niel, we gotta make some sort of friendly wager, dinner or some sort of alcoholic beverage of your choice, that Ellinger is going to be better than Chase Daniel.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that's an easy win right there. Is what that is. That's going to be an easy win, I think.
It looks like Neil and I will be drinking some Maker's Mark.
Oh, he's saying easy win for me.
No, I'm saying he's a shoo-in to be a better pro than Chase Daniel.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Well, I hate.
I mean, granted, Chase Daniel also did float around the league for 10 years as a backup, but hey,
Yeah, that guy's made money, man. That guy's got
Yeah.
money.
yeah, absolutely.
He really has. All right, I want to tell our followers that the Barfly Network show, the Barfly Tailgate show will be on the Barroom Network on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. The guys, I think they're going to have some special guests this week, and they're going to talk about the Super Bowl and talk about all of the latest rumors. Who knows? We might have a quarterback deal done by then. Don't count on it. But, you'll definitely get a lot of speculation from the guys who are so passionate about the Chicago Bears. It's a great show. It's on 10 a.m. Central right here on the Barroom Network. And we've got tons of more stuff coming in the days ahead. Plus this show and lots of draft talk and draft coverage. This is the place to come when you want to talk about the Chicago Bears draft. It's Draft on Tap here on the Barroom Network. Danny, Neil, great job as always, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good.